Chapter 526. Qin Chuan and Su Chuan sat opposite each other at the table. The waiter quickly served the sumptuous dishes, filling the table. Qin Chuan looked at the table full of dishes and smiled at Su Chuan. "Thank you for your hospitality. I won't stand on ceremony." As he spoke, Qin Chuan had already picked up his chopsticks and started eating. He looked like he was enjoying the food. Seeing this, Su Chuan couldn't help but reveal a subtle expression on his face. He asked Qin Chuan, "Aren't you afraid that I'll poison the food?" Hearing Su Chuan's question, Qin Chuan chuckled. He casually picked up the wine jug beside him and poured himself a cup of wine. Then he said to Su Chuan, "If I were afraid of you, I wouldn't have come to the banquet. You're very bold." Su Chuan looked at the smile on Qin Chuan's face. "Are you really not afraid of death? If you're not afraid, why should I be afraid?" Qin Chuan looked at Su Chuan with a playful expression. "If I die, there's still the possibility of becoming a ghost cultivator. After a few hundred years, I might be able to reconstruct my physical body. But if you die, you're really dead. Your souls will scatter. After 10 or 20 years, who in this world will still remember you?" Hearing this, Su Chuan's expression suddenly became gloomy. The gaze he looked at Qin Chuan with became extremely cold. "Judging from your behavior, you didn't plan to have a good talk with me from the beginning, right?" Seeing Su Chuan's expression change, Qin Chuan chuckled. "Just now, I clearly saw you and the 9th young lady walk into the mountain banquet hall together. Now you're telling me that the 9th young lady is grounded. Between the two of us, who is the insincere one?" Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Su Chuan looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, "I really underestimated you. I didn't expect you to arrive in advance to observe. It's always right to be careful, and my choice is obviously correct." Qin Chuan smiled and said, "Now, can we invite that 9th young mistress to come out and meet us?" As Qin Chuan's voice fell, an extremely shocking killing intent suddenly appeared in the private room. "Qin Chuan, do you still recognize me?" An extremely tyrannical voice rang out behind Qin Chuan. When Qin Chuan heard this voice, he subconsciously turned around. At this moment, the space in front of him suddenly distorted. When everything returned to normal, he was no longer in the heaven-class box of the mountain banquet tower, but in the wilderness. Seeing the scene before him change, Qin Chuan's first thought was not camouflage, but that the other party had used some kind of spatial teleportation to teleport him out of the city. Seeing Qin Chuan's expression change, Su Chuan chuckled and said to Qin Chuan, "Although you've been careful enough, you're still too careless. We've already set up an inescapable net here. You can't escape." Hearing Su Chuan's words, Qin Chuan's mood did not change. This was because when he chose to come to the banquet, he was already mentally prepared to be ambushed. However, when he saw the 9th young mistress standing beside Su Chuan's face, his mood was somewhat unsettled. "I really didn't expect that you're the 9th young mistress of the Een Mountain City." Qin Chuan looked at the 9th young mistress with a complicated gaze and asked, "Should I call you 9th young mistress or Limani?" Qin Chuan could never have imagined that the 9th young mistress of the Een Mountain City was actually the 2nd young mistress of the Li family of Xiang City, Limani. To this day, he still clearly remembered the encounter in the Cloud Dragon mountain range. He happened to meet Yuker and her group from Xiang City. They were attacked by a golden-haired monkey. At that time, Limani died at the hands of the golden-haired monkey. He was also implicated and was treated as the murderer of Limani by the Li family. Later, he left Xiang City and never went back, nor did he see Limani again. He did not expect that they would meet again in such a special way today. "Qin Chuan, so you still remember me?" Limani stared fiercely at Qin Chuan. "It's fine that you killed me back then, but why did you kill my sister and destroy her soul?" Qin Chuan was stunned for a moment, then sighed and said, "So your sister's soul was destroyed. Those who kill will be killed by others. Your sister attacked me first, so I was forced to defend myself. She died because of her own killing intent and arrogance. What does it have to do with me? Ha ha, what does it have to do with you? Li Mani laughed crazily. Today, I'll avenge my sister and send you to the underworld to repent to her. You're wrong. Qin Chuan shook his head. Your sister's soul was destroyed. Even if I go to the underworld, I won't be able to see her. How can I repent to her? What a sharp tongue. Su Chuan couldn't stand it anymore. He said to Li Mani, "Ninth young mistress, he's obviously stalling for time. To avoid any more trouble, let's kill him first." Hearing Su Chuan's words, Li Mani also knew that she had been tricked by Qin Chuan. She immediately shouted at Qin Chuan, "Go to hell!" Seeing that Su Chuan and Li Mani were about to attack, Qin Chuan sighed helplessly. He had just looked around and found that there was a restriction formation around them. The people inside should not be able to escape. He could only wait passively for Lion Duke to come to rescue him. He hoped that he could hold on until then. When Qin Chuan had these thoughts in his mind, Su Chuan and Li Mani had already arrived in front of him. As a gold core cultivator, Su Chuan had the ability to fly, so his speed was extremely fast. He was almost behind Qin Chuan in an instant. Among the ghostly shadows, a ferocious and sharp claw stretched out and went straight for Qin Chuan's back. On the other side, Li Mani's movements were not slow either. She rushed in front of Qin Chuan with a sharp roar. Her right hand turned into a sharp claw, and she grabbed at Qin Chuan's neck. In the face of Li Mani and Su Chuan's pincer attack, Qin Chuan did not hesitate to transform into his dragon form. He used the mystical dragon tail to repel Su Chuan and Li Mani. At the moment when Su Chuan was repelled, his figure flashed and once again approached Qin Chuan. He landed on Qin Chuan's back and viciously tore apart Qin Chuan's dragon body with his claw. Golden blood suddenly poured out. Qin Chuan twisted his body and spat a ball of dragon's breath at Su Chuan. Su Chuan's figure flashed again and easily dodged the dragon's breath. At the same time, he attacked again and tore off several blood-stained dragon scales from Qin Chuan's body. At the same time, Li Mani once again pressed over. Her ghostly aura was dense as she used her soul power to attack Qin Chuan. Roar! Qin Chuan looked up to the sky and roared. He spat out dragon's breath again and again to protect himself. However, although Li Mani was restricted by the dragon's breath and could not get close to him, Su Chuan, who was a gold core cultivator, was not afraid at all. Whoosh! A burst of air-piercing sound was heard. Su Chuan's figure suddenly appeared above Qin Chuan's head and wanted to kill Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan sensed Su Chuan's intention and immediately used his dragon horn to release the power of thunder to stop Su Chuan. Unexpectedly, Su Chuan suddenly retreated. Chapter 527. Seeing Su Chuan retreat, Qin Chuan immediately realized that Su Chuan, as a ghost cultivator, was most afraid of the power of thunder. Thinking of this, Qin Chuan immediately dispelled his dragon form, and then took out 2 pieces of medium-grade thunder spiritual stones from his storage ring. In an instant, he inscribed the Thunder Manipulation Charm Array. Thunder Dragon! Qin Chuan shouted in a low voice, and a huge thunder dragon appeared in each of his hands. They roared and rushed toward Su Chuan and Li Mani respectively. Seeing Qin Chuan's counterattack, Li Mani was shocked and turned to run. On the other side, Su Chuan's situation was not much better than Li Mani's. Although the Thunder Dragon could not touch him, when he wanted to attack Qin Chuan, the Thunder Dragon would always block his way. Damn it! Su Chuan gritted his teeth. If I had known, I would not have dodged just now. I would have killed him directly with my palm. Unfortunately, it was too late for Su Chuan to regret. At this time, Qin Chuan had reacted and made the best response. Now, if he wanted to kill Qin Chuan, it would not be as simple as being injured. Just as Su Chuan was thinking about these things, Li Mani, who was slightly weaker, had been defeated by Qin Chuan. She could not hold on any longer. Ah! I'll kill you. Li Mani was finally forced to lose her mind by Qin Chuan. She roared, "Night of 100 ghosts!" Following Li Mani's roar, countless ferocious-looking evil spirits suddenly appeared around her. They roared and rushed in all directions. Li Mani's figure mixed in with these evil spirits and suddenly disappeared. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. He subconsciously recalled the 2 thunder dragons and formed a thunder shield around his body. At the same time, Li Mani's figure appeared not far from him, staring at him angrily. "Qin Chuan, I must kill you!" Li Mani was about to go crazy. She really didn't expect that she and Su Chuan together couldn't do anything to Qin Chuan. At this time, Su Chuan's figure appeared beside Li Mani. He said to Li Mani with some annoyance, "I was careless. I forgot that his talent rune is thunder attribute." As ghost cultivators, what they were most afraid of was the power of lightning. With just this, Qin Chuan was enough to offset the advantage of the 2 of them joining forces. Furthermore, his advantage of being in the gold core stage was useless against the impenetrable protection of the thunder shield. It was not worth it to destroy the power that he had cultivated for half of his life just to kill Qin Chuan. Seeing that they couldn't do anything to Qin Chuan, Li Mani couldn't help but say angrily, "We set up this inescapable trap. Are we going to fail like this?" In the face of Li Mani's anger, Su Chuan was also somewhat helpless. He didn't know much about Qin Chuan. He thought that relying on his advantage in cultivation and Li Mani's assistance would be enough to kill Qin Chuan. He didn't expect that things would develop to such an embarrassing point. If he had known this, he wouldn't have attacked Qin Chuan so easily. "Why don't you fight? Come on, let's continue." Li Mani and Su Chuan stopped, but Qin Chuan was not happy. He had just found a way to restrain ghost cultivators and was about to try it out. How could they stop? Looking at Qin Chuan's arrogant look, Su Chuan was so angry that his teeth itched, but he couldn't do anything. As a practitioner in the gold core stage, he was humiliated by a little guy in the late foundation establishment stage and couldn't fight back. It was simply a great shame. On the other side, Li Mani thought of her sister's death and the oath she made to the way of heaven. Her expression suddenly became resolute and she said coldly, "Su Chuan, I'll break his thunder shield with the soul dispersing technique. You kill him." Hearing Li Mani's words, Su Chuan was shocked and said, "Soul dispersing technique? Are you crazy?" "I'm not crazy. I'm very calm. If I can't kill Qin Chuan in the face of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, I will really go crazy." Li Mani roared, "I must kill him." Su Chuan really didn't expect that Li Mani's hatred for Qin Chuan had reached such a deep level. She would rather disperse her realm to kill Qin Chuan. "Well, since you've made up your mind, I won't persuade you anymore." Su Chuan looked deeply at Li Mani and said, "I will do my best to kill Qin Chuan." Li Mani didn't respond to Su Chuan's words. She used practical actions to show Su Chuan her attitude. When the soul-dispersing technique was used, Li Mani's face couldn't help but show a touch of pain. Her solid body also became somewhat transparent. The thick ghost qi wanted to disperse in all directions, as if a gust of wind could blow her soul away. When Li Mani began to use the soul-dispersing technique, Qin Chuan also noticed the situation here. He glanced at Li Mani's movements, and then without hesitation, he used 2 new pieces of mid-grade Thunder Spirit Stone to strengthen the Thunder Shield. After that, he took out a talisman pen and began to inscribe the all-directional Thunder Prison on the disc array. He didn't want to wait for death, he wanted to make the first move. Just as Qin Chuan began to inscribe the talisman array, Li Mani finally succeeded in using the soul-dispersing technique. She looked up to the sky and cried out in pain. The soul power in her body surged wildly and bombarded Qin Chuan. Soul dispersing. The gray soul power touched the thunder shield and quickly melted like snow. However, the thunder shield also melted together with the soul power. The two forces rubbed against each other and consumed each other's strength. In the blink of an eye, the thick thunder shield became a lot weaker, and Limani's body gradually became illusory. Boom! Accompanied by a burst of explosion, the thunder shield protecting Qin Chuan shattered. Su Chuan, who had been waiting for a long time, immediately turned into a cloud of smoke and shot toward Qin Chuan, who was exposed. Poochie! The green smoke penetrated Qin Chuan's body, causing a huge wound to appear on Qin Chuan's chest. In the blink of an eye, the wound rotted and flowed with thick black blood that emitted a foul smell. It was extremely terrifying. Not far away, the illusory Limani couldn't help but laugh when she saw this scene. She said to Qin Chuan very happily, "Qin Chuan, when you killed my sister, did you think that you would have a day like this? Ha ha, heaven's reincarnation. This time, I will definitely destroy your soul." Whoosh! Su Chuan's figure quickly appeared by Limani's side. He transferred his soul power to Limani's body and helped her stabilize her body. She didn't shake so much that it seemed like she would collapse at any time. Ninth sister, Qin Chuan is definitely going to die. I will bring you back to Yin Mountain now and ask Father to place you in the Yin Pond. Hearing Su Chuan's words, Limani's face couldn't help but show a touch of gratitude. She was about to say something to Su Chuan when her face suddenly became extremely frightened. She shouted, "Su Chuan, behind you!" Before Limani's warning, Su Chuan's heart had already felt a sense of crisis. When he turned around, a terrifying bolt of lightning brazenly struck his body. The violent power surged and instantly exploded. Chapter 528. Hit by the power of thunder, Su Chuan couldn't help but scream. His expression became extremely ferocious. Limani, who was beside him, was not affected much because most of the power of thunder had been blocked by Su Chuan. She just looked at Qin Chuan in horror and despair, unable to accept this fact. When the power of thunder dissipated, Su Chuan fell to the ground in an extremely sorry state. He panted violently, his face full of horror. He looked at Qin Chuan with an extremely horrified expression. "Why aren't you dead? Your chest." Su Chuan looked at Qin Chuan's bare chest in disbelief. He clearly remembered that he had penetrated Qin Chuan's chest. Qin Chuan should have died. Facing Su Chuan's shocked expression, Qin Chuan grinned and said, "I forgot to tell you, I am immortal." Su Chuan didn't believe that Qin Chuan was immortal. However, Qin Chuan's chest had recovered as if nothing had happened. It was hard for him to doubt Qin Chuan's words. If Qin Chuan was really immortal, then what was the point of spending so much effort to ambush Qin Chuan? "I don't believe it, I don't believe it, I don't believe it." Limani was like a mad woman. Her eyes were extremely ferocious as she stared at Qin Chuan. She couldn't wait to kill Qin Chuan with her eyes. She didn't believe that Qin Chuan was immortal. She must kill Qin Chuan. Limani's soul, which had been stabilized with great difficulty, showed signs of collapse because of this madness. At this time, Su Chuan, who was seriously injured, no longer had the mind to care about Limani. He wanted to find a chance to escape. However, when he thought about how he, a dignified golden core stage cultivator, had to run away pathetically from a foundation establishment stage cultivator, Su Chuan felt extremely sullen. However, if he didn't run away, there was a high probability that his soul would scatter and disappear from this world forever. As if seeing through Su Chuan's thoughts, Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Su Chuan, "Didn't you guys set up an inescapable net? Don't tell me it's just the two of you? If that's the case, then I won't hold back." As he spoke, Qin Chuan condensed a sharp lightning blade in his hand. He slowly walked towards Su Chuan. Seeing that Qin Chuan wanted to kill him, Su Chuan's face suddenly turned crazy. He said angrily, "You forced me to do this." In the midst of his angry roar, Su Chuan took out a bronze token from his storage ring and fiercely crushed it. He looked up to the sky and shouted, "Respectfully Lord Yin Shan." Qin Chuan, who was slowly walking forward, heard Su Chuan's angry roar and his face immediately changed. At the same time, an extremely powerful aura descended on the restriction and directly broke through it. A terrifying pressure filled the entire world. At this moment, Qin Chuan felt that his body was as heavy as lead. There was no way for him to move at all. "Father, kill him!" Su Chuan, who had fallen to the ground, shouted loudly towards the imposing figure in the sky. As Su Chuan's voice fell, a huge hand suddenly appeared in the sky and slowly slapped towards Qin Chuan. The speed of the hand was extremely slow, but it made Qin Chuan feel like he had to dodge countless times. He even felt his whole body tremble. That was a complete suppression from the level of life to the level of cultivation. Roar! Just as the hand was about to fall on Qin Chuan's head and smash Qin Chuan into pieces, an earth-shattering roar suddenly came from afar. A majestic figure came from afar and almost instantly crossed the distance of hundreds of miles and appeared in front of Qin Chuan, blocking the huge hand for Qin Chuan. The person who blocked the attack for Qin Chuan was none other than Lion Baron, who had rushed over from the mountain city. Under Lion Baron's protection, Qin Chuan's body could finally move freely. He retreated 2 steps back and looked up at the gloomy sky. His face was full of horror. If Lion Baron hadn't arrived in time, he would have been a dead man by now. The late stage of the Foundation Establishment stage could still fight against the early stage of the Golden Core stage, but against the nascent Soul stage Yinshan, he was no different from an ant. "It's actually you." Above the sky, a cold voice came, revealing 3 parts coldness and 7 parts indifference. "Hee, Mountain Lord Yinshan, you'd better retreat. I don't want to fight with you." Lion Baron sneered. If possible, he really didn't want to fight with Mountain Lord Yinshan. After a moment of silence, the dark clouds in the sky gradually dissipated, and the sky became clear again. Seeing this scene, Lion Baron breathed a sigh of relief, turned to Qin Chuan and said, "Mountain Lord Yinshan is gone. The crisis is temporarily resolved." Hearing Lion Baron's words, Qin Chuan also breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at Lion Baron with lingering fear and said, "If you hadn't arrived in time, I might have been dead." Lion Baron heard this and laughed. "I didn't expect those 2 little guys to be so smart. They actually used Mountain Lord Yinshan's shadow-shifting technique to forcibly transfer you here. Before, there was a seal covering you, so I couldn't find you. Later, Mountain Lord Yinshan came and broke through the seal, so I found you in time and rushed over." While speaking, Lion Baron turned his head to look at Limani, who was lying on the ground and was about to collapse, and said to Qin Chuan, "I didn't expect you to be able to fight against 2 people by yourself and almost kill them. The main thing is that the power of thunder is too effective against ghost cultivators." Looking at Limani lying on the ground, Qin Chuan couldn't help but sigh softly, and he didn't know what to say. When Mountain Lord Yinshan left, he only took Su Chuan with him. He didn't take her with him. He must have abandoned her. "What do you plan to do with her?" Lion Baron looked at Limani, who was about to collapse, and said to Qin Chuan, "She seems to hate you very much. She's already like this, but the way she looks at you is still as fierce as ever. Even if I die, I will curse you to die a horrible death. Everyone around you will die because of you." Limani seemed to have exhausted the last of her strength to say the most vicious words to Qin Chuan. Then, she looked up at the sky, and her eyes gradually became unfocused. "Sister. I'm sorry." Whoosh. A breeze blew, and Limani's soul, which was on the verge of collapse, instantly turned into nothingness and dissipated between heaven and earth. From then on, Limani was no longer in this world. Qin Chuan didn't sympathize with Limani's fate. He just felt that a pitiful person must have a hateful side. In his eyes, it wasn't he who killed Limani, but the obsession and hatred in her heart that killed him. Back then, because Limani coveted the golden-haired monkey's son, she was hunted down and killed by the golden-haired monkey. It had nothing to do with him, but she wanted to forcefully implicate him. After that, when he wanted to leave Xiang City, Li Man forcefully chased after him without mercy. If it wasn't for the power of the runic sword, the one who died in the end would be him. He wanted to live, so those who wanted to kill him had to die. Chapter 529. The confrontation between Een Mountain Lord and Lion Duke was very short, but the terrifying aura shocked the entire mountain city. There were nascent soul practitioners fighting outside the mountain city. Although the process was very short, no one other than nascent soul practitioners would have such a terrifying aura. These two people, Zhong Qiu looked outside the city with a dignified expression and said to Uncle Zhong beside her, "One of them should be Een Mountain Lord." As a nascent soul practitioner who had been famous for a long time, Een Mountain Lord had a great reputation in the world mountain. His aura was not unfamiliar to everyone, because no nascent soul practitioner's aura would be as cold as Een Mountain Lord's. As for the other one, Zhong Qiu felt familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had seen him before. It is indeed Een Mountain Lord. Uncle Zhong looked outside the city with a subtle expression and said to Zhong Qiu, "As for the other person, we have seen him before." Zhong Qiu looked at Uncle Zhong with some confusion and asked, "Who?" Uncle Zhong pursed his lips and said, "Lion King of the Lion Tribe." Hearing Uncle Zhong's words, Zhong Qiu couldn't help but be stunned and said with some disbelief, "Lion Duke?" "Yes, Lion Duke." Uncle Zhong nodded. "I can't be wrong about his aura." Speaking of this, Uncle Zhong couldn't help but sigh. "I thought that Lion Duke's foundation was damaged and his realm fell, and he would never have the chance to enter the Demon King realm again in this life. I didn't expect to feel his aura again today. Not only did he return to the Demon King realm, but he is even stronger than before. He really is Lion Duke." Zhong Qiu felt that this aura was very familiar, but she couldn't remember who it was for a while. Hearing Uncle Zhong's reminder, she immediately recalled that this aura belonged to the most powerful Lion King in the history of the Lion Tribe. But why did Lion Duke have a conflict with Een Mountain Lord? Zhong Qiu was a little puzzled. Een Mountain Lord hasn't left Een Mountain for over 100 years. Could it be related to Qin Chuan that he suddenly appeared outside the city in the mountain? Qin Chuan had said that everyone in Een Mountain, aside from Een Mountain Master, was trash. He would have angered the entire Een Mountain, and Een Mountain Master was one of them. But with Een Mountain Master's status, he wouldn't have come out just because of a junior. And yet, Een Mountain Master's presence had appeared outside Mountain City. Aside from Qin Chuan, what else could have attracted Een Mountain Master's attention? "Madam, we only need to know one thing to know who Lord Een Shan is after." Uncle Zhong looked at Zhong Qiu with a subtle look and said in a low voice, "We just need to confirm whether the person beside Qin Chuan is Lion Duke or not, and the answer will be clear." Hearing Uncle Zhong's words, Zhong Qiu's face couldn't help but reveal a touch of astonishment. "You are the weirdest person I've ever met." Lion Duke sat on the ground with a weed in his mouth. He looked at Qin Chuan with a speechless look. Qin Chuan, who was piling up dirt, asked, "What's weird about me?" "You're not weird, are you?" Lion Duke rolled his eyes. "Your enemy is dead, and you're making a grave for her. If I didn't know better, I would have thought she was your relative." Qin Chuan chuckled and replied, "Death is the most important thing. At the end of the day, she was a pitiful person. Since she's already dead, I can't possibly go against her." As he spoke, Qin Chuan had already finished building the grave. He clapped his hands and looked at the grave in front of him. He said in a low voice, "Your soul has already dissipated, so I can only build a cenotaph for you. I hope that in your next life—" "Sorry, I forgot that you don't have a next life." Lion Duke, who was sitting on the side, heard Qin Chuan, and couldn't help but complain. "You are such a bad person." Qin Chuan walked in front of Lion Duke and said, "You saved my life. Today I'll use up one chance." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Lion Duke had a playful look on his face. He asked, "Are you sure this counts? I don't have a problem with it." "I don't have a problem with it, either. You did save my life, and my life is very valuable." Qin Chuan had always been a reasonable person. Lion Duke and Yin Shan Jun didn't fight today, but Lion Duke did save him from Yin Shan Jun. If Lion Duke hadn't arrived in time, he would have been a dead man. So, no matter what, he used up one chance to ask Lion Duke for help. "Good boy, I like your temper." Lion Duke laughed, then reached out his hand and hooked Qin Chuan's shoulder. "Big cousin, I won't take advantage of you. Tonight, let's go to the biggest restaurant in Mountain City to eat my treat." Qin Chuan made a wry smile and said, "The biggest restaurant in Mountain City is Mountain Banquet House. I already have a shadow in my heart. Let's go to another restaurant." Hearing Qin Chuan, Lion Duke laughed again. Qin Chuan. Just when Qin Chuan and Lion Duke were preparing to return to Mountain City, suddenly two figures quickly rushed over from a distant place. Qin Chuan thought that it was another enemy, but when he looked carefully, he discovered that it was Yaorao and Ma Jiawen. Yaorao rushed to the side of Qin Chuan and worriedly asked Qin Chuan, "Are you okay?" Qin Chuan looked at Yaorao with puzzled expression and asked, "How did you know I was here?" Yaorao replied, "Did you forget what I told you before? The closer we are, the stronger the sense is, plus you took the pill I gave you, so I guess that you must have had an accident, so I rushed over." Hearing Yaorao, Qin Chuan's face revealed a touch of understanding, then said to Yaorao with a smile, "The matter is already over. I really have to thank you for the pill you gave me, otherwise today I might really be in trouble." Before, because of the matter of offending Yinshan, Yaorao had sent a mail to Qin Chuan to help him withstand the pressure from Yinshan. At that time, Qin Chuan refused Yaorao's good intentions. Later, Yaorao made Ma Jiawen give Qin Chuan a pill that could rapidly recover injuries that Qin Chuan had eaten in unfettered secret realm. This time, Qin Chuan didn't refuse Yaorao's good intentions and accepted the pill. Just a moment ago, Qin Chuan's chest was pierced by Su Chuan. If not for him immediately taking that pill, then he ought to have died at that time, so Qin Chuan was really grateful to Yaorao. "It's good that you know how to thank this queen." Hearing Qin Chuan's gratitude, Yaorao's face couldn't help but reveal a happy smile. "As long as you treat this queen well, you can have as much phoenix blood as you want." "Phoenix blood? You're quite willing to invest in Qin Chuan, aren't you?" Hearing the name Phoenix Blood, Lion Baron standing at one side suddenly revealed a touch of pondering expression, then looking at Qin Chuan and Yaorao, his expression became extremely ambiguous. Chapter 530. Who are you? Yaorao confusedly looked at Lion Count. She felt that Lion Count was somewhat familiar, as if she had seen him somewhere before. "Heh, guess who I am?" Lion Count smiled. "When you were still an egg, I had hugged you." Hearing Lion Count, Qin Chuan's face couldn't help but reveal a strange expression. It was really hard for him to imagine the appearance of Lion Count hugging an egg. "Who are you calling an egg?" Yaorao anxiously said. "You are an egg, your whole family are eggs." Just when Yaorao was about to continue to reason with Lion Count, Ma Jiawen stepped forward and pulled Yaorao's sleeve, then pulled Yaorao to her side. Yaorao looked back at Ma Jiawen and asked with puzzled expression, "What are you doing?" Ma Jiawen looked at Yaorao with extremely solemn expression, then looked at Lion Count and respectfully asked, "May I ask if Senior is the former Lion King of Lion Tribe, Senior Lion Count?" Hearing Ma Jiawen's words, Yaorao couldn't help but opened her eyes wide, then suddenly turned to look at Lion Count and involuntarily said, "You are Lion Count?" Lion Count chuckled and looked at Ma Jiawen, then again looked at Yaorao. Seeing the shocked expression on Yaorao's face, he said with a smile, "What's wrong? Did that old fellow Yao Feng teach you like this since childhood? You directly call Senior by his name? Compared to the little fellow of Heavenly Horse Tribe, you, this princess, are really far behind." Having heard what was said, Ma Jiawen immediately said to Lion Count, Princess Yaorao is innately intelligent, I can't compare to her, Senior is overpraising. Senior, please don't blame me, it is this princess. This junior has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. At this time, Yaorao also reacted and quickly apologized to Lion Count. Although she was a princess, but in front of Demon King, she was only a junior. Okay, I don't mean to blame you, you little girl have always been straightforward and don't have any thoughts. Lion Count chuckled, then said to everyone, let's not chat here, let's go back first. Before, a battle between Yuanying realm experts had broken out here, so after the battle, there were bound to be curious people coming to investigate. If they continued to stay here, they would inevitably be discovered. Although they were not afraid, but it would cause some unnecessary trouble, so it was better to leave early. On the way back to the mountain city, Yaorao pulled Qin Chuan to one side, then asked in low voice, "Why are you with him? Also, how did he recover his realm?" Although Yaorao hadn't seen Lion Count for a long time, but she had heard about the matters of Lion Count. She knew that Lion Count was once a demon king with very high status in demon race. Later, because of a battle, his foundation was damaged and his realm fell, then he was driven out of Lion tribe and disappeared without a trace. The last time he appeared was when he followed Mouse Clan to Elf City of Star Dragon Federation, then he disappeared again. She thought that Lion Count had already died because of his injuries, but she didn't expect to see Lion Count again today. Moreover, he had also returned to Demon King Realm. Hearing Yaorao, Qin Chuan faintly smiled. This matter is a long story. If you know me, then you should know that at that time in Elf City, I was taken away by Senior. We knew each other from that time, and after meeting several times, we became familiar with each other. Because I didn't know the way to Demon Realm, I asked Senior to escort me, then we came here. After hearing Qin Chuan, Yaorao said with some surprise, "You two actually knew each other from that time? You as a human actually dared to deal with demon race's demon king, your courage is really big." Having heard Yaorao, Qin Chuan chuckled, "If my courage was not big enough, then I wouldn't have planned to go to your Heavenly Demon Mountain as a guest." Mentioning the matter of going to Heavenly Demon Mountain as a guest, Yaorao suddenly asked Qin Chuan, "Then before, did you miss me?" Finished speaking, Yaorao felt it was inappropriate, so she promptly explained, "I mean, because you took Phoenix blood, so… well, no need to explain." Qin Chuan chuckled, then interrupted Yaorao. He looked at Yaorao's bashful appearance, then teased, "Do you want to know whether I missed you or not?" Having heard what was said, Yaorao immediately turned her head, then snorted and said, "No." Buzz. At this time, Qin Chuan's optical computer suddenly lit up. He opened it and took a glance, then said with a smile, "Wow, Super Big Beauty sent me mail." "Who?" Yaorao immediately turned her head, then wanted to open Qin Chuan's optical computer. "Who sent you mail? Let me see." "What are you looking at?" Qin Chuan looked at Yaorao with a smile and asked, "Are you jealous? Don't tell me you really like me?" "Qin Chuan," Yaorao angrily said, "you are really too hateful." Seeing Yaorao gnashing her teeth, Qin Chuan decided not to tease her, then seriously said, "Just now I was joking, the person who sent me mail is my teacher." Finished speaking, Qin Chuan turned his optical computer towards Yaorao, letting Yaorao see the content of the mail, and sure enough the sender was Ningya. "I don't want to see it." Although Yaorao said she didn't want to see it, but her eyes were very honest as she read the content of the mail without missing a word. After she finished reading, she somewhat asked in surprise, "Your teacher actually came to World Mountain?" Qin Chuan nodded his head. "Maybe because she heard about the matter of before, teacher is somewhat worried about my safety, so she especially hurried over to see me. Your teacher is actually very concerned about you." Yaorao shot a glance at Qin Chuan and said, "Wait until your teacher comes, I will arrange it, then we can have a meal together and get to know each other. I am actually very curious what kind of teacher can teach a student like you." Hearing Yaorao, Qin Chuan almost couldn't hold back and wanted to tease Yaorao again whether she wanted to meet his parents or not, but after thinking about it, he finally gave up. He was afraid that if he provoked Yaorao again, he would be in deep trouble. Why don't you speak? What, you don't want to? Yaorao cast a sidelong glance at Qin Chuan. Her eyes were filled with threatening intention. It's not that I don't want to, but we don't need to wait, I think, tonight. Qin Chuan chuckled and pointed at the tall woman who had appeared at the roadside, then said to Yaorao, "Let me introduce you. This is the most famous person of Black Moon Combat Academy, beautiful voice, sweet, cute, and charming forever 18 years old teacher Ning Yanning." Hearing Qin Chuan, Yaorao subconsciously looked at the charming woman wearing black Chong Sam standing not far away, and with a surprised expression, she said, "So this is your teacher, so young and beautiful. Which cultivator isn't young?" Qin Chuan grinned. "Which one of you girls doesn't have the ability to retain your youthful looks? Smelly brat, I didn't come all the way to World Mountain to listen to you ridicule me." Ning Yanning looked at Qin Chuan, who was walking in front of her, then after sizing up Qin Chuan, she turned her gaze towards Yaorao, who was walking beside Qin Chuan, then asked with a smile, "You are Princess Rao of Demon Clan?" Chapter 531. Facing Ning Ye's inquiry, Yaorao immediately replied, "Junior greets Teacher Ning, you can call me by my name Yaorao." Seeing Yaorao was so clever and sensible, Ning Ye somewhat sighed with emotion and said, "I really didn't expect that rumored proud and aloof Princess Yaorao is actually so clever and lovely in reality. Perhaps we are fated to meet each other. I especially like you since the first time we met." Having heard Ning Ye, Yaorao immediately replied, "I also like Teacher Ning very much. This is the first time I have seen Teacher Ning with such temperament and beautiful girl. Ha ha ha, being praised by a young and beautiful girl always makes people incomparably happy." Ning Ye covered her mouth and smiled. "You are also very beautiful, more beautiful than I had imagined." Qin Chuan, who was standing at the side, couldn't listen anymore. These two people flattered each other endlessly. Could it be that they didn't feel tired of it? "You too. Qin Chuan, teacher is talking, do you have the right to interrupt?" Ning Ye looked at Qin Chuan with a smile. "Do you understand the meaning of respect for teacher?" "Qin Chuan, it's not that I want to criticize you, but can't you be a little sensible?" Yaorao looked at Qin Chuan, then sighed and said, "You are not young anymore, how come you don't have a little bit of eyesight?" I was wrong. Qin Chuan quickly raised his hand to express his surrender. "You two continue to chat, I will absolutely not disturb." Seeing Qin Chuan admit his mistake and admit defeat, Ning Ye and Yaorao looked at each other, then laughed and continued to chat. Qin Chuan speechlessly walked to the side of Lion Ju, then asked, "Big cousin, have you ever had a girlfriend?" Hearing Qin Chuan's question, Lion Ju snappily glared at Qin Chuan and said, "Get lost." Qin Chuan mischievously smiled, but didn't get lost and continued to ask, "Have you ever had a girlfriend? You have lived for at least hundreds of years, right? You can't possibly cultivate wholeheartedly and never have your heart move." Lion Duke glanced at Qin Chuan and said, "I'm not like you. The environment I live in is far worse and more dangerous than you can imagine. I can't trust anyone but myself. That's why I never look for women." "What about your parents?" Qin Chuan was curious. "Can't they be trusted?" Lion Lord was silent for a moment, and then he said to Qin Chuan, "It is because they trusted others that they died so miserably. That is why I do not trust anyone." After hearing Lion Duke's answer, Qin Chuan said apologetically, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring up your sad past." "It doesn't matter. It's been so many years. I've already let it go." Lion Duke smiled calmly. "You are a very special person, kid. If someone else had asked me this question, they might have been answered with a majestic lion claw." Qin Chuan knew that Lion Duke was telling the truth. He pursed his lips and said, "Big cousin, we are quite similar. My parents have passed away too. I'm even worse than you. I don't even know how they died." I know who my enemy is, but I don't even have the qualifications to stand in front of him. I want revenge, so I want more power, more power, more power. Lion Duke didn't know much about Chinchuan's past. When he heard Chinchuan's story, he patted Chinchuan's shoulder and said to Chinchuan, "Your life is a bit pitiful. But without it, you wouldn't have achieved what you have today. Actually, I'd rather be an ordinary person with a happy family." Chinchuan smiled and said, "At least I don't have to work so hard. Even if I die, I'll die. I won't have any regrets." "Don't talk about it. It will affect your state of mind." Lion Duke looked at Chinchuan seriously and said, "As a cultivator, you must remember that there are some things you can't say. You can't even think about it." Chinchuan nodded and remembered what Lion Duke said. He knew that Lion Duke said this out of good intentions. As a cultivator, in addition to cultivating the body, one must cultivate the mind. Cultivating the mind was especially important. Only by calming the mind would one not encounter heart demons when breaking through bottleneck. Looking at it now, Chinchuan might not be affected, but when he advanced to the gold core stage in the future, what he thought and said today might become a heart demon that would bother him. If he could overcome the heart demon, then it would be fine. If he couldn't overcome the heart demon, then he was afraid that he would never reach the gold core stage in his life. When Chinchuan and the others returned to the mountain city, they could hear people everywhere discussing the nascent soul stage battle that happened not long ago. Some people even described it vividly, as if they had seen it with their own eyes. They simply described the nascent soul stage cultivators as omnipotent gods and devils, which was extremely exaggerated. After returning to the hotel, Ningya stopped chatting with Yaorao and called Chinchuan to her room alone. Ningya looked at Chinchuan, who was sitting in front of her, and said, "Who told you to sit? Go stand aside." Hearing Ningya's words, Chinchuan helplessly stood up and walked to the side. Then he said to Ningya, "Master, what did I do wrong? Do you think your wings have grown? You dare to make friends with anyone?" Ningya looked deeply at Chinchuan and said, "Does it feel good to call a great beast your brother? Master, big cousin and Lion Duke and I are friends. He won't harm me." Chinchuan seriously said to Ningya, "If he wanted to harm me, I definitely wouldn't be alive now." Chinchuan was telling the truth. If Lion Duke wanted to kill him, he should have died after meeting Azure Dragon Song Hao. "Humph, you're lucky." Ningya coldly snorted, "Sit down and talk." Hearing Ningya telling him to sit down, Chinchuan knew that Ningya's anger had subsided. He immediately smiled and said to Ningya, "Master, I know you're thinking about me and are worried about me. I know what I'm doing, so you can rest assured." "Then what's the matter with Yaorao?" Ningya stared at Chinchuan and said, "There are so many beautiful girls in our Star Dragon Federation who like you, but you don't want any of them. Why do you want to be together with the princess of Demon Race? Do you know what you'll face if you two get together?" Facing Ningya's question, Chinchuan became silent. He naturally knew what he would have to face if he and Yaorao walked together, and it was precisely because he clearly knew all of this that he hadn't made any preparations until now, and hadn't broken the final window paper. Seeing Chinchuan was silent, Ningya let out a long sigh. Then she earnestly said to Chinchuan, "Master, I've been through this before. I know that once you fall in love with someone, it's very difficult to turn back. It's very difficult to forget. So today I won't advise you to let go of the feelings in your heart. I won't make you make any difficult choice. I just want to tell you that before you have the ability to bear everything, don't do something that will make you regret." Chapter 532. After a moment of silence, Chinchuan seriously looked at Ningya and said to Ningya, "Master, if a cultivator wants to cultivate their heart, they have to face their own heart and understand what they really want. I know what I'm doing, and I know what I'm going to face. I'm ready." Hearing Chinchuan's answer, Ningya looked at Chinchuan with a complicated look in her eyes. She sighed faintly and said to Qin Chuan, "You and your mother are exactly the same. Both of you have a stubborn temper. Once you have decided on something, even 8 oxen can't pull you back. But this is also good, it saves me from worrying about you." Qin Chuan heard this and said to Ningya with some guilt, "Master, I am sorry, I made you worry too much." "You're wrong. I'm worrying too much." Ningya smiled slightly and looked at Qin Chuan with gentle eyes and said, "You are already an adult. You have your own judgment and the ability to make your own choices. I shouldn't have said so much to you. Now what I should do is to quietly watch you grow to a higher level. At that time, Master will be proud of you." Hearing Ningya's words, Qin Chuan's eyes couldn't help but moisten. Since he was a child, he had never felt what was called a father's love and what was called a mother's love. Now under the care of Ningya, he experienced the feeling of being cared for and cared for. "Master, I will definitely become your pride." Qin Chuan looked at Ningya with firm eyes. "I swear." The popularity of the Yuanying stage cultivator was still high in the mountain city. Very few people mentioned the one-on-one duel in the arena. Until today's duel was about to start, everyone finally remembered this matter after seeing the advertisement of the arena. They bought tickets to enter the arena to watch the duel. Qin Chuan was resting in the box prepared for him in the arena as usual. The person beside him was still the Lion Duke. As for Ningya, she was in the box of the enchanting woman, chatting with her. "Big cousin, after today's duel, we can set off for Mount Tianyao." Qin Chuan exhaled and said to the Lion Duke, "My training can be over." After going through the previous series of battles, in addition to the life and death battle yesterday, Qin Chuan had completely solidified his foundation. Without any worries, there was no point in continuing to participate in this 1 against 1,000 challenge. However, because the arena had already released the news, he would withdraw from the competition after this round. "Indeed, you can withdraw." The Lion Duke chuckled. "Kid's growth is faster than I thought. Of course, it is more twists and turns." Qin Chuan had only been in the World Mountain for more than half a month, and he had already attracted the attention of the Een Mountain Lord, a Yuanying stage cultivator who had not appeared for hundreds of years. Ordinary people absolutely did not have the ability to attract hatred. With the speed of your progress, it won't be long before you condense a golden core and pass the first heavenly tribulation in your life. How about it? Are you looking forward to it? The Lion Duke looked at Qin Chuan with playful eyes. "But you are a cultivator with thunder attribute after all. You shouldn't be afraid of the thunder tribulation." Qin Chuan smiled when he heard the words. "Of course I'm looking forward to it. I even have the impulse to take a bath in the heavenly tribulation." "Okay, don't talk nonsense. Go ahead." The Lion Duke glanced at the direction of the door and said to Qin Chuan, "By the way, invite the old guy at the door in for me." Qin Chuan looked at the direction of the door with some surprise, then got up and walked to the door. He opened the door and looked at the white-haired old man standing at the door and asked curiously, "Who are you looking for?" The old man looked at Qin Chuan calmly and whispered, "I'm looking for the Demon King, the Lion Duke." When Qin Chuan heard the old man's words, he stepped aside and said, "Please come in." The old man thanked Qin Chuan and then walked in. Qin Chuan closed the door and walked toward the arena. In the box, the Lion Duke looked at the person who walked in and laughed. "Zhongqing, you old man are still alive." The person called Zhongqing was naturally Uncle Zhong, the calm and amiable old butler next to Zhongchu. At this time, facing the Demon King, Lion Duke, he was neither servile nor overbearing. He even faintly felt like he was on par with the Lion Duke. "You're still alive. There's no reason for me to die." Zhongqing slowly walked to the sofa and sat down. "I'm surprised that you're hanging out with a little human. You don't understand. This is called experiencing the life of a young person." The Lion Duke narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Zhongqing, then asked, "You didn't send the people who have been monitoring us before, did you?" "That was the madam's idea." She was worried about Qinchuan's safety, so she sent people to protect Qinchuan. Zhongqing responded faintly, "But with you here, it's unnecessary for us to send people over." "Madam?" The Lion Duke was a little confused. "Which madam?" "My master's sister." Zhongqing replied, "You might have some impression. She pulled your beard when she was young, and you gave her 3 whiskers as a souvenir." Hearing Zhongqing's words, the Lion Duke's face suddenly showed a look of realization and said to Zhongqing, "So it's that little girl. I remember now. But I didn't expect you to be so loyal to the Zhong family. Even now, you're still guarding the Zhong family." Zhongqing pursed his lips and said, "If it weren't for my master saving my life and helping me with my cultivation, I wouldn't have achieved what I have today. In this life, I will never leave the Zhong family. I will always guard the Zhong family until I'm the only one left." "I admire you. I really admire you." The Lion Duke praised, "You humans are all heartless and unjust. It's rare to see someone with a heart like yours. But then again, why does that little girl care so much about Qinchuan?" The Lion Duke was a little confused, and he asked, "What is her relationship with Qinchuan?" Zhongqing was silent for a while, then replied, "The madam has nothing to do with Qinchuan. She has something to do with Qinchuan's father." "Ha ha, I understand." Lion Duke had a knowing look on his face. "It seems like Qinchuan has inherited his father's trait. He has to be merciful wherever he goes. He's not easy to deal with. Well, since I'm sure it's you, then I'm relieved." Zhongqing stood up and said to the Lion Duke, "Let's go." The Lion Duke saw Zhongqing getting up and leaving, so he asked, "You're leaving? There aren't many old friends left. Don't you want to chat a little longer?" "I'm going back to accompany the madam to watch the game. I'm not interested in chatting with you." Zhongqing looked at the Lion Duke and said, "About my identity, don't tell Qinchuan." "Well, well, well." The Lion Duke waved his hand at Zhongqing and suddenly asked, "You're so attentive to that little girl. Do you like her?" Boom. Zhongqing's aura surged toward the Lion Duke, and the Lion Duke's face changed instantly. "If you want to test my depth, you don't have to make such a boring joke. I'll satisfy you." Zhongqing looked at the Lion Duke deeply, then turned and left. Chapter 533. The spectator seats in the arena were still full. Everyone was looking forward to the start of the duel. Before this, they had already emptied their wallets and bet on the side they favored. Naturally, most of the spectators favored Qinchuan. After all, Qinchuan's previous performance was obvious to everyone. The amazing record of killing 10 opponents in one strike was not something that anyone could do. Of course, the spectators did not know that Qinchuan only had one chance. If they knew this, the spectators might think more carefully before placing their bet. Qinchuan walked through the corridor as usual and came to the arena. When he appeared, the spectators immediately cheered, as if they had seen a lot of money fly into their pockets. At the same time, the other 50 cultivators in the Foundation establishment realm also began to enter the arena. Each of them had a serious expression on their faces. Obviously, they did not want to lose. As cultivators in the Foundation establishment realm, each of them had their own pride in their hearts. Facing Qinchuan, who was a small realm lower than them, if they could not win, it would be really embarrassing. Qinchuan looked at the 50 cultivators in the Foundation establishment realm, who entered the arena one after another. He could not help but feel a little emotional. This kind of scene was actually quite spectacular. When he thought of fighting against 50 cultivators in the Foundation establishment realm, he felt a little excited. "Qinchuan, you can't win today." Just as Qinchuan was thinking about these things, a young man suddenly stood out from the crowd opposite him, his face full of arrogance. Qinchuan looked at the young man's proud and confident face and asked doubtfully, "You are?" "I'm the one who is going to end your winning streak and defeat you. Remember my name, I'm Yi Han." The young man's face was full of confidence. I will inherit your will and become an invincible man in the Foundation establishment realm. Hearing Yi Han's words, Qinchuan's face could not help but reveal an extremely strange expression. He could not help but say, I'm not dead yet. I don't need you to inherit my will. This Yi Han looked to be around 20 years old, about the same age as him, but his brain didn't seem to be working too well. No matter how he looked at it, he seemed to be Chunibu. Qinchuan wasn't the only one who felt that Yi Han's brain wasn't working well. Even the people standing beside Yi Han subconsciously distanced themselves from Yi Han. They felt that Yi Han didn't use his brain at all when he spoke. If he wanted to act pretentious, he should have waited until he won the duel. If he acted pretentious now, wouldn't it be a slap in the face if he lost? However, when Yi Han saw that the others had distanced themselves from him, he did not feel that it was his fault. Instead, he sighed and said, It's lonely at the top. The strong are always lonely. Qinchuan. Everyone. Not only did Qinchuan and the other contestants feel a little embarrassed, the audience were all amused by Yi Han. They also did not understand where Yi Han's confidence came from. Without the 49 people around him, was he even qualified to fight with Qinchuan? Woo woo woo. Just when everyone was extremely amused by Yi Han's performance, the horn that signaled the start of the duel finally sounded. The atmosphere at the scene suddenly became tense and serious. Under everyone's gaze, Qinchuan slowly took out a long sword from his storage ring, then a second, a third. Everyone looked at Qinchuan's movements with some astonishment. No one expected that Qinchuan would actually take out a total of 10 long swords and carry them on his back. He looked like a peacock spreading its tail. In the box, Su Miao saw Qinchuan's movements and asked curiously, What is he doing? Su Kuang shook his head and said, I don't know. I guess he wants to practice his swordsmanship in actual combat. To be honest, he looks down on his opponent too much. Su Kuang admitted that Qinchuan's strength was very strong, but at this time, he was not facing one Foundation Establishment Perfection stage, but a total of 50 Foundation Establishment Perfection stage cultivators. He was so confident to practice his swordsmanship with 50 strong opponents. Either he had real skills or he was too arrogant. Although Qinchuan did have some real skills, Su Kuang still felt that Qinchuan was very arrogant. Perhaps this time, Qinchuan would suffer a loss. On the other side, Zhongqing also returned to the box at this time. Zhongqiu, who was watching the duel through the screen, turned her eyes to Zhongqing, who came in and asked, Butler, do you know the identity of that person? Madam, I have confirmed that he is indeed Lion Duke. Zhongqing replied to Zhongqiu, previously, In Shan Jun came out to target Qinchuan, but he was blocked by Lion Duke. Hearing Zhongqing's words, Zhongqiu's expression couldn't help but become subtle. She whispered, I didn't expect it to really be him. It's really strange that he would follow Qinchuan. It is indeed strange, Zhongqing nodded. He stayed by Qinchuan's side. Perhaps he has some ulterior motives. I have investigated. Qinchuan obtained a worm leg from Zerg's Archon in the Carefree Secret Realm. Many large forces in the Star Dragon Federation are eyeing Qinchuan, wanting to get a share of the loot. Zhongqiu sighed. With Qinchuan's current strength, it is indeed a sin to have such a treasure. Zhongqing said, however, it is said that Qinchuan left the Archon's worm leg in the Black Moon Combat Academy. It is now in the hands of Ning Zhongtian. It is basically impossible for those people to get a share of the loot from Ning Zhongtian's hand. Zhongqing admired Ning Zhongtian very much, but at the same time, he was also very wary of him. If he were to rank the current nascent soul cultivators, Ning Zhongtian would definitely be in the top 3. If he were to rank the people he was most unwilling to fight, Ning Zhongtian would definitely be in the first place. I hope everything goes well for Qinchuan. Zhongqiu sighed. He can't stay in the mountain city forever. We can only take care of him in the mountain city. He still has to walk his own path in the future. Zhong Qing originally wanted to say something, but at this moment the sound of the horn stopped. The battle on the stage had begun. The moment the sound of the horn stopped, Qin Chuan, who was facing 50 perfect foundation establishment cultivators, advanced instead of retreating. With a sword in each hand, he brazenly charged into the crowd. Everyone felt that Qin Chuan's choice was extremely good. If Qin Chuan chose to retreat, he would definitely become a live target in everyone's eyes and be attacked by long-range attack. However, if he charged into the crowd, then everyone would have to worry about their teammates while attacking Qin Chuan. In fact, there were only a few people who could come into contact with Qin Chuan. The situation could be said to be greatly advantageous to Qin Chuan. Yi Han, who had been clamoring to replace Qin Chuan, had disappeared without a trace and blended into the crowd. It seemed that he had no intention of attacking Qin Chuan. Chapter 534. The moment the battle broke out, Qin Chuan had already injured 2 opponents with the sharpness of his long sword. Qin Chuan had not been learning swordsmanship for a long time. Apart from the absolute sword that he received from the military, Qin Chuan only knew one swordsmanship, which was the basic swordsmanship: stab, slash, point, lift. Qin Chuan executed each move as if he was following a script. He neutralized the attacks of the surrounding opponents and counterattacked at the same time. He tried his best to protect himself from harm. Rather than saying that his spiritual energy was being consumed on offense, it was more accurate to say that it was being consumed on defense. Originally, everyone was still worried that Qin Chuan would be too strong and too difficult to deal with. At this moment, they finally relaxed and heaved a huge sigh of relief. If Qin Chuan's strength was only at this level, then even if they had to exhaust him, they would still be able to exhaust him to death. Qin Chuan's opponents heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Qin Chuan's performance. However, those who had bet heavily on Qin Chuan began to worry. If Qin Chuan couldn't display his invincible might in the end, and if this situation continued, then they would definitely lose the duel. Shiyu had at least passed this level. Since Qin Chuan could defeat Shiyu, he should be able to pass this level. While everyone was worried about Qin Chuan's performance, Qin Chuan himself felt very good. When he did not use what he was good at, the gap between him and his opponents was infinitely narrowed, which made him feel great pressure. This not only had the effect of practicing swordsmanship, but also had the effect of unearthing his potential. It could be said that it was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. As for whether he would win or lose in the end, Qin Chuan didn't care. What he wanted was to increase his strength, not win. In the box, Ningya was looking at Qin Chuan's performance. Her eyes were carefully distinguishing each of Qin Chuan's movements. She was carefully looking for the subtle mistakes that Qin Chuan had made in the battle. Qin Chuan's attainment in swordsmanship is still not good enough. His sword movements are not smooth enough. Although it can be seen that he has been improving and changing, but it is still not good enough. Ningya said to Yaorao, who was sitting beside her while watching the match. This is only to deal with ordinary complete foundation establishment stage. If he encounters a genius of the same realm, then Qin Chuan's swordsmanship will be severely beaten. Hearing Ningya's words, Yaorao cutely stuck out her tongue and said in a low voice, "Actually, Qin Chuan is not as bad as you said, right? He has just started learning swordsmanship, so it is normal for his level to be low. I believe it will not be long before his swordsmanship will greatly improve. Give him a little more time." When Ma Jiawen, who was sitting beside Yaorao, heard Yaorao's gentle and lovable tone, the corner of her mouth slightly twitched. She was really not used to Yaorao using this kind of tone to speak. Too terrible. Ningya actually didn't feel that there was any problem with Yaorao's tone, so she faintly smiled and said to Yaorao, "What you said is right. Qin Chuan has always been growing, and compared to many of his peers, he is already more outstanding. It is me who was too strict with him." There were some words that Ningya didn't say. She was strict with Qin Chuan because she also hoped that Qin Chuan could grow up as soon as possible. She was worried that someday in the future, Qin Chuan would encounter Shangguan Yuanhao, but he didn't have the strength to kill Shangguan Yuanhao. As far as Qin Chuan was concerned, that would be too cruel. If possible, Ningyu really hoped that this day would arrive a bit later, so as to give Qin Chuan a bit more time. Yarao looked at Qin Chuan with sparkling eyes and said with approval, "Qin Chuan is indeed more outstanding than most of his peers, and there are very few people who can stand shoulder to shoulder with him. At least I haven't met anyone who is more outstanding than Qin Chuan." Hearing Yarao's words, Ma Jiawen's lips moved. She really wanted to remind Yarao that the heir of Tiger King clan was not inferior to Qin Chuan in all aspects, and was even stronger than him. So Yarao shouldn't neglect that heir of Tiger King clan, but she didn't say it out loud. She didn't want to make Yarao unhappy at this time. Looking at Yarao's serious appearance, Ningyu's eyes couldn't help but flash with a touch of subtle color. She had seen all the girls around Qin Chuan, and with the exception of Lu Zi, Yarao was the second girl who looked at Qin Chuan with stars in her eyes. She also had that kind of eyes before. On the arena, the battle had already entered the white-hot stage. Because of Qin Chuan's attack, the number of people who had lost their fighting strength and left the arena had already reached 20 people. And Qin Chuan was also not in a good condition. At this time, his body was already covered with scars, and light golden blood was flowing out from them, which appeared extremely mystical. At this time, out of the 10 swords on Qin Chuan's back, 4 of them had already been broken, and now the 2 swords in his hand were also damaged beyond repair, and were on the verge of breaking. One must know, the worst grade of these swords was low-grade magic weapon, but now they were broken one after another. The loss was really astonishing. Roar! A burst of roar resounded from Qin Chuan's back, and a cultivator who was focused on cultivating his body suddenly swelled up, and like a huge black bear, he pounced towards Qin Chuan and ferociously collided with Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan raised the sword in his hand to block, but under this powerful impact, the long sword was immediately broken, and the huge body didn't reduce in the slightest as it collided with Qin Chuan's body. The moment Qin Chuan was fiercely sent flying, the surging spiritual power in the air changed into a huge black bear, and waving its huge claws, it ferociously slapped on Qin Chuan's chest. Puff! Qin Chuan immediately opened his mouth, and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face suddenly turned pale, and with a plop, he fell into the arena, smashing a huge deep pit in the arena. Seeing this scene, the audience's cheers suddenly stopped. Everyone looked at Qin Chuan lying in the deep pit with extremely nervous eyes, hoping that Qin Chuan could stand up and continue to fight, and not choose to surrender for the sake of survival. Under the gaze of tens of thousands of people, Qin Chuan climbed up from the deep pit with some difficulty. He panted slightly, and grinned at his numb opponents and said softly, "It's not enough, it's still far from enough. Go to hell." An angry roar sounded, and a swordsman took out a golden flying sword, which flew towards Qin Chuan like a meteor. Seeing that it was about to stab Qin Chuan suddenly turned around, and the scabbard on his back blocked the sword that was almost certain to kill. At the same time, he took out 2 long swords again, turned around brazenly, and charged into the crowd again. When the crowd saw that Qin Chuan had charged back again, their eyes turned red. They were not willing to become a supporting character for Qin Chuan, and they wanted to fight back. Seeing this scene, the silent crowd was once again filled with cheers. Qin Chuan had not fallen, and he was still writing his legend. Chapter 535. Kill! Amidst the angry roar, Qin Chuan pierced the heart of the person in front of him with his sword. Then, he turned around and slashed his sword at the person on the left. At the same time, his back was also hit by someone. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. Qin Chuan turned around and wanted to fight back, but what greeted him was a strong fluctuation of spiritual energy. A pitch-black blade slashed towards him, and everything in its path was turned into nothingness. Qinchuan's pupils suddenly shrank, and he subconsciously wanted to dodge. However, he was surrounded by people on all sides. Everyone surrounded him and did not give him any space to dodge. Pucci. When the blade entered his body, Qinchuan's face immediately turned pale. He opened his mouth and spat out a large amount of blood. Then, he fell back. At the same time, the others also attacked Qinchuan. Various spiritual energies appeared in the air and bombarded Qinchuan's body. Seeing this scene, the audience suddenly burst into exclamations. Under such a heavy attack, the possibility of Qinchuan surviving was almost zero. At this moment, the hundreds of thousands of people in the colossal arena fell into a state of silence. Everyone's eyes were wide open as they stared at the situation in the arena. They wanted to see if Qinchuan, who had fallen into the deep pit, still had any chance of survival. In the arena, everyone surrounded the deep pit and looked at Qinchuan, who was lying in the deep pit. The expressions in their eyes were very subtle. They were not sure whether Qinchuan was dead or not, but looking at Qinchuan's current appearance, even if he was not dead, he was not far from death. He should be dead, right? Someone asked with uncertainty. In the current situation, they did not know if they should continue to kill Qinchuan. Their goal of winning had been achieved. If they continued to attack Qinchuan, it would be too obvious that they wanted to strangle a genius in the cradle. The people behind Qinchuan would definitely not let them off easily. He should be dead. In that situation, no one could hold back. Some people began to find excuses for killing Qinchuan, while others began to look around, as if they wanted to see what others had to say. Qinchuan defeated 26 of us just now. He did not kill us and only lost the ability to fight. If he wanted to, he could have killed all of them. Someone in the crowd whispered, and everyone suddenly quieted down. Everyone looked at each other, and then looked at the ground of the arena in unison. Other than the traces of battle left on the ground, there were only bloodstains. There were indeed no corpses. Those who were injured and lost the ability to fight had already left the arena. Seeing this, the crowd's silence became even heavier. At this moment, another voice was heard. This is the arena where life and death are determined. Qinchuan is being merciful to those people. What does it have to do with us? Has nothing to do with us. Dong! Dong! Just as the crowd was discussing and shirking responsibility, a drum-like sound suddenly rang out in the arena, attracting everyone's attention. When the crowd found the source of the sound, their faces were filled with shock. The drum-like sound came from Qinchuan, who had fallen into the deep pit. Seeing the violent beating of Qinchuan's chest, the crowd immediately realized that it was Qinchuan's heart beating. This meant that Qinchuan was still alive. As time passed, the sound of the heartbeat became louder and louder. Qinchuan's aura also became stronger and stronger. When they saw this scene, an extremely shocked expression appeared on everyone's faces. None of them had expected that Qinchuan was still alive. He was actually reviving. In the private room, Zhong Chuyu's heart finally calmed down when she saw this. She raised her hand and wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes without leaving a trace. She said softly to Zhong Qing, "Housekeeper, look after these people. If anyone dares to attack Qinchuan at this time, I will annihilate their entire family." Zhong Qing said softly, "I will look after each of them and stop them in time." With Zhong Qing's words as a guarantee, Zhong Chuyu's mood wasn't as nervous as before. It was just that she couldn't understand what was going on with Qinchuan. On the other side, Lion Duke was not surprised when he saw Qinchuan coming back from the dead. It was as if it was a matter of course. As expected of the phoenix blood. This stinking brat was injured to such an extent, but he was still saved. Lion Duke chuckled. If that old man Yao Feng knew that Qinchuan had eaten a lot of his precious daughter's phoenix blood, he would be hopping mad. At the moment when Qin Chuan fell down, Ningya couldn't help but want to save him, but she was stopped by Yaorao. Teacher Ning, Qin Chuan is all right, believe me. Yaorao stopped Ningya, then promptly said to Ningya, he has phoenix blood to save his life, so he will be fine. Ningya turned around and looked at Yaorao in surprise, then asked, phoenix blood? What is that? It is the real phoenix blood that I gave Qin Chuan. As long as he still has a breath, he can be reborn. Not only he won't die, but he will also be reborn, and his strength will rise to a new level. Yaorao faintly smiled. I gave him phoenix blood 3 times, so he should have 3 lives. Hearing Yaorao's explanation, Ningya's face couldn't help but reveal a touch of shock. Yaorao had actually given Qin Chuan real phoenix blood, moreover 3 times. You are really too good to him. At this time, Ningya also didn't know what to say to Yaorao. Yaorao was really too good to Qin Chuan. It's okay. Yaorao was somewhat embarrassed by Ningya's gaze. It's not that good. Seeing this scene, Ma Jiawen, who was sitting at one side, helplessly shook her head. She and Yaorao had known each other for 20 years, but Yaorao had never once given her phoenix blood. But Qin Chuan in such a short period of time had eaten phoenix blood 3 times in succession. If this wasn't good to him, then what was good to him? She had to say, Ma Jiawen really envied Qin Chuan. Not only did he have Ningya, this kind of elegant and intellectual teacher, he also had Lion Duke, this demon king's protection, and now he also had Yaorao's sincerity. He was simply a standard winner in life. When everyone was endlessly exclaiming about the changes in Qin Chuan's body, a figure suddenly jumped high from the platform, and holding a long blade, directly chopped towards Qin Chuan's head. Qin Chuan, I, Yi Han, will replace you and become invincible in Foundation establishment. Go to hell. Chapter 536. Yi Han's sudden attack was out of everyone's expectations. Amidst the exclamations, the long saber in Yi Han's hand was already close to Qin Chuan's head. Saber chi poured out and fiercely chopped down. Clang! A crisp sound of metal clashing rang out in the deep pit. A long sword blocked the fatal attack at the critical moment. The person who blocked the attack was none other than Qin Chuan. Yi Han looked at Qin Chuan, who had suddenly stood up, with an extremely shocked expression. He exclaimed, "You can still move?" Originally, Yi Han wanted to take advantage of Qin Chuan's lack of resistance to launch a sneak attack on Qin Chuan. However, he didn't expect that Qin Chuan had already regained consciousness. Qin Chuan grinned and replied, I originally wanted to experience the feeling of being refreshed. However, you've already jumped onto my face. If I don't make a move, I'm afraid I'll lose my life. At this moment, Qin Chuan could also tell that the person who had slashed his back and seriously injured him was this Yi Han in front of him. At that time, the attack had come too suddenly. He didn't even have time to react before he was seriously injured. When he sensed the spiritual fluctuations that filled the sky converging towards him, he thought that he was going to die. There was a moment of despair and regret in his heart. Then, he lost consciousness in the intense pain. When he regained consciousness again, he was extremely surprised to find that not only was he still alive, his body had undergone earth-shattering changes. He had actually stepped into the Foundation establishment realm. Just as Qin Chuan's mind was filled with question marks and he was thinking about what was going on, Yi Han suddenly jumped out and interrupted Qin Chuan's thoughts. Understanding Qin Chuan's words, Yi Han's gaze subconsciously fell on Qin Chuan's body. He was shocked to find that the injuries on Qin Chuan's body had completely recovered. Furthermore, the aura on his body was much stronger than before. You actually broke through? How is this possible? Yi Han widened his eyes and exclaimed in disbelief. When everyone heard Qin Chuan's exclamation, they subconsciously tried to sense his cultivation level. As expected, Qin Chuan's aura was full and full. He was already at the Foundation establishment realm. When everyone saw that Qin Chuan had already broken through to the perfected foundation establishment stage, their faces revealed extremely astonished expressions. It was already very good for others to not die from such an injury, but Qin Chuan was actually a blessing in disguise and directly broke through to the perfected foundation establishment stage. There was no justice in this. I have indeed broken through. Qin Chuan smiled. So, let's continue. As he spoke, Qin Chuan reached out and pulled out a long sword from his back. He was going to continue his previous battle mode, challenging everyone with 2 swords. 1. At the instant Qin Chuan drew his sword, a wisp of blue sword qi shot out violently, and it directly pierced through Yi Han's abdomen and blasted Yi Han flying. In the next moment, Qin Chuan's figure suddenly appeared above Yi Han. The tip of his sword was pointed at Yi Han's heart, and a murderous intent gushed out from the tip of the sword. When Yi Han saw Qin Chuan's actions, his pale face suddenly revealed a look of horror. He shouted, "Don't kill me!" However, before his voice fell, the blade in Qin Chuan's hand had already pierced through his chest. The sharp sword aura suddenly exploded, ending Yi Han's life. When Yi Han's body fell to the ground, the audience burst into extremely enthusiastic cheers. However, there was a dead silence in the arena. Everyone looked at Yi Han, who had fallen to the ground, and Qin Chuan, who was standing to the side, with extremely complicated gazes. Yi Han was the first person to die in Qin Chuan's hands in the arena. Everyone was also very clear that the reason why Qin Chuan killed Yi Han was because Yi Han wanted to kill Qin Chuan. After confirming that Yi Han was dead, Qin Chuan slowly turned around and looked at the remaining opponents. He said calmly, "Come on, let's continue the battle. Those who want to kill me, go ahead and kill them." When they heard Qin Chuan's words, the expressions on everyone's faces could not help but become a little subtle. The meaning in Qin Chuan's words was very obvious. Those who wanted to stop at a certain point with him, he would naturally stop at a certain point. And those who wanted to kill him, he would also fight back with a killing blow. The battle had progressed to this point, and there was actually no suspense. With Qin Chuan's current state and momentum, the remaining 20 or so people were definitely not his match. However, everyone was unwilling to admit defeat and retreat just like that. "Let me have a taste of your brilliant moves." A burly man shouted angrily and stepped forward. His fists were like cannonballs as they flew towards Qin Chuan. He was also at the Foundation Establishment Completion realm, and he did not believe that he was inferior to Qin Chuan by that much. When Qin Chuan saw the burly man rushing over, he laughed loudly and raised his sword to meet him. When the blade of the sword collided with the man's fist, an extremely crisp sound burst out. The hardness of the burly man's fist was far beyond Qin Chuan's imagination. Qin Chuan was taken aback. When he looked carefully, he realized that the burly man was not barehanded. He was wearing a pair of extremely thin boxing gloves on his hands. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to see them at all. "This is a pair of boxing gloves that I hired a famous craftsman to cast with half of my life's savings. It's called Gale." The burly man shouted angrily and the spiritual power in his body surged. A light green whirlwind suddenly burst out from his iron fist and whistled towards Qin Chuan. When Qin Chuan saw this, he raised his sword and the violent sword qi was drawn into the whirlwind. It suddenly exploded and the whirlwind was cut into pieces. At the same time, Qin Chuan's figure suddenly flashed and he quickly approached the burly man. The blade in his hand slashed towards the burly man's chest and legs. The burly man reacted quickly and immediately separated his hands, one above and one below, wanting to block Qin Chuan's slash. At this moment, Qin Chuan made an extremely shocking move. The long sword in Qin Chuan's left hand suddenly split into two. Qin Chuan opened his mouth and used his teeth to bite the third sword, stabbing it straight towards the burly man's abdomen. The burly man did not expect Qin Chuan to have such a move. He immediately mobilized all the spiritual power in his body, wanting to protect himself with a spiritual shield. However, it was already too late. Poochie! The blade pierced through the burly man's abdomen and blood splattered everywhere. At the same time, Qin Chuan jumped back and reached out to catch the blade in his mouth. "Who else wants to fight with me? I welcome you." Qin Chuan had already shown mercy in the previous blow. Otherwise, the burly man would have been a corpse by now. When everyone saw the battle between Qin Chuan and the burly man, they felt their blood boiling at this moment. Before Qin Chuan's voice fell, several figures jumped out and wanted to fight with Qin Chuan. When Qin Chuan saw this, he immediately raised his sword and met them. The battle broke out again. This time, Qin Chuan won faster than before. Under the full power of the dual sword style, no one was a match for him. All of them were defeated by his sword. When Qin Chuan defeated 2 more opponents, there were less than 10 opponents left standing in front of him. Chapter 537. Seeing the incomparably hot-blooded battle on the arena, Yaorao felt as if the blood within her body was also burning. Her eyes were sparkling as she looked at Qin Chuan, who was bathed in blood on the arena, then excitedly said to Ningya beside her, "Teacher Ning, did you see that? He is going to win soon." Ningya nodded her head and exclaimed in admiration, "His growth is really too fast, now compared to before. His swordsmanship is already a lot smoother and more natural, moreover he is actually walking on the path of dual sword style. Not only dual sword style, just a moment ago he defeated that brawny man who was wearing boxing gloves using triple sword style." Yaorao somewhat expectantly said to Ningya, "If he is really able to master triple sword style, then his swordsmanship will definitely become even stronger." Hearing Yaorao, Ningya however lightly shook her head. She didn't think that Qin Chuan could easily master triple sword style. Using 3 swords to fight doesn't represent triple sword style. Triple sword style not only requires to simultaneously use 3 swords, but also simultaneously achieve triple heart, and release sword intent at will. Of course, the current Qin Chuan still hadn't comprehended sword intent, so it was also possible for him to release sword chi at will. But from Qin Chuan's current performance, triple sword style was still too forceful, but he was using double sword style extremely smoothly. "I believe Qin Chuan will definitely be able to do it." Yaorao was extremely confident in Qin Chuan. With his ability, if he wants to do it, then it will definitely not be a problem. Seeing the performance of Yaorao, Ma Jiawen, who was sitting at the side, couldn't continue watching, so she whispered to Yaorao, "Princess, reserved a bit." Hearing Ma Jiawen, Yaorao's complexion slightly turned red, then lightly coughing, she asked Ma Jiawen in a low voice, "Was my performance a moment ago very exaggerated?" Ma Jiawen looked at Yaorao with a very strange gaze. Yaorao's performance a moment ago was not only exaggerated, it was simply too exaggerated. Could it be that you don't even know what kind of appearance you had a moment ago? In human terms, you are simply Qin Chuan's little fangirl. Of course, it was absolutely impossible for Ma Jiawen to say this kind of words. She could only tactfully remind Yaorao, "Your performance just now was a bit exaggerated, not too ladylike. Qin Chuan's teacher is a very elegant and very gentle lady, so she definitely likes more gentle and quiet girls." Hearing Ma Jiawen, Yaorao lightly nodded her head, then turned towards Ma Jiawen with a smile and asked, "Teacher Ning, are you thirsty? Let me make you a pot of tea." Finished speaking, without waiting for Ningya's response, Yaorao directly took out a set of tea set from her storage ring and placed it on the table in front of her, then began to brew tea. Her movements were elegant and skilled, clearly she was well versed in the way of tea. "I didn't expect Yaorao to be proficient in tea ceremony." Ningya faintly smiled, then picked up the teapot that Yaorao had placed at the side, opened it and took a look, then praised, "The taste of this tea is very peculiar. It should be spirit tea, right?" "This is indeed spirit tea. Its name is Heavenly Bewitching Fragrance." My father Emperor specially found people to plant and cultivate this tea, and only one tea tree can bloom every 10 years. Yarao, while brewing tea, said to Ningya, "If you like, then I can give you a pot. Then I won't be polite with you." Ningya took out a talisman pen from her storage ring, then said to Yarao, "I also don't have any suitable gift to give you. This talisman pen is the talisman pen that I have always used when I was young to practice talisman array. Treat it as a little bit of my regard for you." "I like this gift very much, thank you." Yarao very happily took the talisman pen handed over by Ningya. Although the value of this talisman pen was far less than 1% of a pot of heavenly bewitching fragrance, but the significance it represented was nevertheless extraordinary. Yarao really liked this talisman pen very much. While Ningya and Yarao were chatting and laughing, the duel on the arena was finally coming to an end. At this moment, there were only 3 people left standing in front of Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan's lungs were heaving up and down, and he was violently gasping for breath. After fighting continuously until now, his physical strength and energy were greatly consumed, and the spiritual power in his dantian had already reached the bottom, so it could be said that he was exhausted. At this moment, facing only 3 opponents, he felt that he was about to be unable to hold on. Qin Chuan felt tired, but how could the other 3 people standing in front of him also not be tired? The 3 of them had joined hands to attack Qin Chuan, but not only they didn't cause too much disturbance to Qin Chuan, instead they were badly battered by that mysterious third sword attack of Qin Chuan, and were riddled with scars. At this moment, they had already reached the point of exhaustion. If they continued to fight, then they would not be competing with Qin Chuan in terms of fighting strength, rather in terms of willpower. Whoever could endure, and persist until the end, would be the winner. Plop! The tall and thin man who was sweating profusely and had deathly pale complexion sat down on the arena. His breath was like gossamer, and incomparably weak said to the person beside him, "I persist." "I can't persist." Before he could finish speaking, the tall and thin man's vision turned black, and he fainted. And when the other 2 people saw the tall and thin man fainted, their face couldn't help but reveal a touch of bitterness. The 3 of them joining hands were still unable to defeat Qin Chuan, not to mention now there were only 2 of them. Plop, plop. Along with the muffled sound of 2 people, both of them were also lying on the ground in an incomparably sorry state. They were gasping for breath, and simply didn't want to move even a finger. Seeing this scene, the audience suddenly burst into earth-shaking cheers. The winner of this battle was Qin Chuan, who was still standing on the arena. If one didn't personally experience it, absolutely no one would know how tired Qin Chuan was. He didn't remember how he returned to the hotel. He only knew that when he woke up, it was already 2 days later. When he woke up, the first person he saw when he opened his eyes was Ningya. At this time, Ningya was sitting on the bed eating fruit salad. When she saw Qin Chuan wake up, she stabbed a piece of fruit with a fork and handed it to Qin Chuan's mouth. She smiled and said, "This fruit is very sweet. You should like it." At this time, Qin Chuan didn't care about the difference between a man and a woman. He opened his mouth and ate the fruit. He didn't even chew it before swallowing it into his stomach. It wasn't too late. He suddenly sat up, reached out and grabbed the fruit plate in Ningya's hand. He grabbed the fruit and stuffed it into his mouth. He was really starving. Seeing Qin Chuan wolfing down the food, Ningya chuckled, "Eat slowly, don't choke. I knew that you'd be very hungry when you wake up. This plate of spirit fruit will definitely fill your stomach." Qin Chuan didn't speak, but just ate the fruit salad in big mouthfuls. In just a moment, the fruit plate was empty. Phew! Qin Chuan let out a long sigh of relief, threw the fruit plate on the table beside him, and then lay back down. He burped contentedly. After filling his stomach, he felt alive again. Chapter 538. Ningya looked at Qin Chuan's comfortable face, then asked with a smile, "How do you feel?" Comfortable, my whole body feels comfortable. Qinchuan said with a satisfied face, Teacher, what kind of spirit fruit is this? This is given to me by Yaorao. She specially told me to make a fruit salad with spirit spring water for you to eat, so that it will help your body to absorb it. Ningya looked at Qinchuan with a smile and said, You brat, for such a girl to care about you, it's really your blessing. Seeing Qinchuan didn't speak, Ningya said, Do you know why you were able to come back from the dead at that time? Hearing Ningya's words, Qinchuan's eyes couldn't help but flash with a touch of subtle color, then asked, Is it related to Yaorao? Ningya nodded and said in a rather complicated tone, She said that you had taken a pill called Phoenix Blood. That pill was made from Phoenix's heart's blood, and when you were on the verge of death, it had the effect of nirvana rebirth. Hearing this, Qinchuan's complexion couldn't help but become somewhat subtle. He was silent for a moment, then said in a low voice, She is really good to me. So what are you going to do? Ningya curiously looked at Qinchuan. For saving my life, it's not too much to repay with my body, right? Qinchuan was silent again. This time the silence was longer than before. After a good while, he looked at Ningya, then said in a low voice, Teacher, you know I don't have the qualifications to talk about these things, I want revenge. Ningya sighed, then advised, But your life can't only be filled with hatred. I know Yaorao is very good to me, I also like Yaorao, but liking is one thing, being together is another thing. I don't want to die one day, and she still has to take revenge for me. Qinchuan said in a very low voice, Living in the world of hatred, I alone am enough. Do you really think this is good? Have you ever thought about that Li Mani who died in your hands? Ningya faintly said to Qinchuan, What's the difference between you and her now? Li Mani also lived in the world of hatred, always thinking about revenge. When she met Qinchuan again, even if she knew that she had no chance of victory against Qinchuan, she still rushed over like a moth to the flame, and the result was her soul extinguished, forever disappeared from this world. If Li Mani could let go of the hatred in her heart, then as the 9th Miss of Een Mountain, she would have a very good life. Step. Calm. He and Yaorao. He. Seeing Qinchuan silent again, Ningya gently shook her head. You think about it clearly, I will only say so much, have a good rest. After saying these words, Ningya got up and walked out of the room. Qinchuan looked at the departing back of Ningya, opened his mouth but no words came out. Just when Qinchuan's victory against 50 people was in an uproar in the mountain city, the news of Qinchuan's withdrawal suddenly spread in the arena. It could be said that a stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Qinchuan had broken through 4 stages in a row in the 1 against 1,000 challenge. His strength was obvious to all, and he definitely deserved the title of Invincible Foundation Establishment. Some people couldn't understand Qinchuan's withdrawal, but more people could understand Qinchuan's choice. In the 1 against 50 challenge, although Qinchuan won the final victory, his performance was very extreme, which was obvious to everyone. Since it was so difficult for Qinchuan to win against 50 people, then Qinchuan had no chance of winning against 100 people. Therefore, it was reasonable for Qinchuan to withdraw. Shiyu also chose to withdraw after breaking through the 4th stage. It could be seen that the limit of the Invincible Foundation establishment should be about 1 against 50 people. And those who couldn't understand also had their reasons, because Qinchuan didn't use the talisman array that he was best at, nor did he transform into a dragon. Instead, he fought with swordsmanship that he wasn't proficient in. Many people thought that Qinchuan was using this battle to practice his swordsmanship. In fact, this was indeed the case. If Qinchuan went all out, he would definitely win the 1 against 50 challenge easily. Even if it was a bit difficult for him to win the 1 against 50 challenge, it might not be impossible. In their opinion, no matter what, Qinchuan should give it a try. If he felt that he couldn't win, he could just admit defeat on the spot. He would only lose the rewards of the first 3 rounds. However, no matter what others said, Qin Chuan's withdrawal had become an established fact. There was no way to change it. In the hotel room, Qin Chuan looked at Ningya, who was sitting in front of him, and asked, "Teacher, are you going back soon?" Ningya nodded and said, "You have the protection of the Lion King by your side, so I don't need to continue to stay by your side. Moreover, I don't want to go to the demon realm. After you leave, I plan to go back to school. Teacher needs my help to make the armor for you." Qin Chuan heard this and said to Ningya with some regret, "It's a pity. I wanted to enjoy the scenery of the demon realm with you, teacher. You might as well accompany Yao Rao." Ningya stood up and said to Qin Chuan, "I'm leaving, you don't have to send me off." Before her voice fell, Ningya's figure had already disappeared in front of Qin Chuan. Zhong Mansion. Ningya stood in front of the simple stone door, and her face couldn't help but flash with a touch of nostalgia. Creak. The stone door slowly opened, and Zhong Cheng's figure appeared in front of the door. He said to Ningya, "Please come in." Ningya looked at Zhong Cheng with a subtle look and asked, "You are Uncle Zhong, right? I haven't seen you for so many years, but you are still the same." "Miss Ning, I haven't seen you for many years, but you are still as elegant as before." Zhong Cheng smiled slightly and said, "Please." Ningya stepped through the door, and under Zhong Cheng's lead, she walked through a long corridor and came to a living room with a very modern feel. At this time, Zhong Chuyu was standing in front of the sofa, waiting for her arrival. "I thought you wouldn't come, but I didn't expect you to come." Zhong Chuyu looked at Ningya and asked, "The last time we met should be 15 years ago, right?" "Yes, 15 years ago." Ningya nodded. 15 years have passed, but I didn't expect you to still be single. Don't tell me you don't plan to marry in this life? Aren't you also single and unmarried?" Zhong Qiu took a deep look at Ningya. "When I learned that you accepted Qin Chuan as your student, I knew that you haven't let go of that feeling in your heart." Speaking up to this point, Zhong Qiu sighed again. "How could I not be unable to let go?" Chapter 539. It's because I know you can't let it go, so I came to see you. Ningya looked at Zhong Qiu and said softly, "Qin Chuan told me that someone was secretly protecting him, but he didn't know who that person was. At that time, I guessed it was you, so why didn't you see him?" Zhong Qiu pursed her lips and asked, "Then what identity do you think I should use to see him? Family or friends?" Ningya was silent. She knew in her heart that Zhong Qiu still couldn't let go of the matter of that year. Seeing Ningya didn't speak, Zhong Qiu's face couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile, and whispered, "If he didn't know Qin Qing, he wouldn't have gone to Star Dragon Federation, he wouldn't have died there, and our child would be as old as Qin Chuan by now. Emotional matters are too complicated, there's no way to say who's right and who's wrong." Ningya sighed. "In fact, you should let it go. You haven't let it go, so what qualifications do you have to persuade me to let it go?" Zhong Qiu looked at Ningya. "Qin Chuan should be my child, but now I don't even have the identity to see him. You will never understand the pain in my heart." Ningya was speechless. After all, she thought too simply about some things. "I'm going to leave Border Mountain and go back to school soon. Qin Chuan will go to the demon realm with Lion Duke and Yao Rao. If he encounters any trouble in the demon realm, it will be very difficult for me to get involved, so I want to ask you to take care of him." Finally, Ningya decided not to say anything more, and just spoke the purpose of her trip. Although Qin Chuan was protected by Lion Duke, but Lion Duke was after all a member of the demon race. If Lion Duke wanted to harm Qin Chuan, only Zhong Qiu had the ability to protect Qin Chuan. Hearing Ningya's words, Zhong Qiu slightly frowned and asked, "Qin Chuan withdrew from the competition not because he has completed the experiential learning, but because he wants to go to the demon realm? Why does he want to go to the demon realm?" "I just mentioned a person, her name is Yao Rao. Don't tell me you don't know who Yao Rao is?" Ningya looked at Zhong Qiu with a subtle gaze and said, "Yao Rao invited Qin Chuan to Mount Tianyao as a guest, and Qin Chuan agreed. Zhong Chuyu was stunned, and so was Zhong Qing. The demon princess was inviting Qin Chuan to Mount Tianyao as a guest? And Qin Chuan agreed? One dared to invite while the other dared to accept. Are you crazy? Why didn't you stop him? Zhong Chuyu walked quickly to Ningya and questioned, Don't you know how dangerous it is for him to go to Mount Tianyao? Mount Tianyao was the center of the entire demon realm, and it was also where the demon emperor resided. Qin Chuan, a human, going to Mount Tianyao as a guest was no different from sending a lamb to the tiger's den. Facing Zhong Chuyu's anger, Ningya smiled bitterly and said, If I could stop it, I wouldn't say these words to you. Moreover, Qin Chuan and Yaorao are somewhat fond of each other. This time, Zhong Chuyu was completely stunned. She was completely dumbfounded. Qin Chuan had fallen in love with the princess of the demon race? The princess of the demon realm also likes Qin Chuan? Zhong Chuyu's breathing became somewhat hurried. She coldly stared at Ningya and said in a heavy voice, Are you sure you're not joking with me? Do you know what this means? That's the princess of the demon realm. How can the two of them be together? There's nothing impossible in this world. Ningya looked at Zhong Chuyu, just like he was your fiancé, but in the end, he married another woman and had children. Bastard. Zhong Chuyu grabbed Ningya's collar and coldly said, Do you think I don't dare to touch you? I'm just stating a fact. When he went to Star Dragon Federation to gain experience, did you ever think that he would never come back? Ningya softly sighed. There are many beautiful girls around Qin Chuan. Whether it is their family background or cultivation talent, they are all excellent. But Qin Chuan doesn't like any of them, so what can I do? How many outstanding girls were around Qin Chuan? Lu Zi, Zhou Lin, Bai Yu, and even Yi Qingning and Long Xiao. Which one of these girls wasn't one in a million? Which one of them didn't have boundless prospects? But Qin Chuan only had friendship with them and didn't have any other feelings, so what could she do? She couldn't imitate the ancient times and give Qin Chuan an arranged marriage. Zhong Chuyu had investigated Qin Chuan's information. She was also very clear that there were many outstanding girls around Qin Chuan. She also once thought that Qin Chuan's future wife might be one of them. But she never thought that Qin Chuan would actually fall in love with the monster race's princess. No, we must stop it. Zhong Chuyu resolutely said. He absolutely can't be together with the monster race's princess. What's the reason? Ningya looked at Zhong Chuyu. They can't be close relatives. What do you mean by this attitude? Zhong Chuyu's tone was anxious. Do you know that if Qin Chuan is together with that monster race's princess, it will greatly affect his public opinion? Whether it is the human race or the monster race, they won't accept him. Isn't there still Jia Mountain? Ningya calmly said, On the contrary, I think it's very good. If he can put down the hatred in his heart for Yaorao and settle down in Jia Mountain, that's definitely a good thing. Hatred in his heart? Zhong Chuyu frowned. What does that mean? Ningya gently raised her eyebrows and pretended not to understand. Did I say that just now? You must have misheard. I have a panoramic camera here. Do you want us to go to the monitoring room to take a look? Zhong Chuyu gnashed her teeth and said, What else are you hiding from me? Ningya sighed and said with a wry smile, I was careless and actually let it slip. What kind of hatred can Qin Chuan have in his heart? Don't tell me you can't guess. Hearing this, Zhong Chuyu couldn't help but tremble, and asked with a trembling voice, Is it the Qin family or someone else? It's not convenient for me to tell you that person's name. Ningya stretched out her hand and pulled Zhong Chuyu's hand away from her collar. Don't interfere in this matter. It won't do you any good, and Qin Chuan won't want you to. Ningya's words were rudely interrupted by Zhong Chuyu before she finished speaking. She stared at Ningya and asked with a sharp voice, Who? Who killed him? Madam, calm down. Zhong Qing stepped forward and pulled Zhong Chuyu away, then said to Ningya, Miss Ning, we'll definitely do what you asked us to do. You should also leave. Ningya nodded at Zhongqing, then turned around and prepared to leave. Just at this moment, an extremely terrifying aura suddenly descended. Ningya suddenly turned around and looked at Zhongqiu, whose aura was in chaos, with an extremely shocked expression. She then looked at Zhongqing, whose expression was extremely solemn, and asked anxiously, "She is heavenly tribulation?" Zhongqing looked at Zhongqiu, whose complexion was slightly pale, and said in a deep voice, "Madame's Yuanying heavenly tribulation is coming." Chapter 540. Zhongqing never thought that Zhongqiu's nascent soul stage tribulation would come in such an extremely sudden way. Looking at Zhongqiu's pale face, his heart sank to the bottom. He said to Ningya, "Miss Ning, Madame's body is a little weak. May I ask if you..." While speaking, Zhongqing turned his eyes to Ningya. When he saw Ningya's state, he couldn't help but be stunned on the spot. He didn't know when Ningya's aura had become extremely unstable. It seemed that she was facing her own nascent soul stage tribulation like Zhongqiu. Zhongqing was stunned. He had lived for hundreds of years, but this was the first time he had seen such a situation. Two cultivators in the peak gold core stage were facing their nascent soul stage tribulation at the same time in the same place. Not to mention Zhongqing, Ningya was also stunned. She never thought that she would be affected by Zhongqiu's aura and face her own nascent soul stage tribulation in advance. But she was completely unprepared. If she faced the tribulation in such a hurry, she might be directly obliterated by the thunder tribulation. "Go find Qinchuan," Ningya said to Zhongqing with some difficulty. "He can help me." At this time, the aura of the tribulation had become stronger and stronger. Ningya knew that she couldn't wait any longer. She took out 2 portions of the consul's thigh meat from her storage ring, threw one of them to Zhongqiu, who was not far away, and said in a deep voice, "Eat." Zhongqiu took the thigh meat and directly opened her mouth to eat without even looking. When the fragrant thigh meat turned into a warm current that contained astonishing energy in her body, her complexion finally became better. However, this warm current was consumed extremely quickly and couldn't last for long. Rumble. In the hotel, Qinchuan looked at the gloomy sky outside the window and felt the terrifying pressure that made him shudder. His face couldn't help but become extremely dignified. The sky in the mountain amongst city is created by the real-time simulation system. It's not a real sky, but the sky now gives me a very real feeling. What's the matter with the dark clouds? And the pressure? Qinchuan was puzzled, but Lion Duke, who was standing next to him, had a serious look on his face. "This is a heavenly tribulation." Lion Duke pursed his lips. "Someone is going through a heavenly tribulation in the city." Qinchuan looked at Lion Lord in shock. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. In the city? The Golden Core Thunder Tribulation has such a terrifying momentum? Lion Duke looked at Qinchuan and said in a deep voice, "Who told you that this is the Gold Core Thunder Tribulation? This is a nascent soul lightning tribulation." Qinchuan was shocked and exclaimed, "Nascent soul stage thunder tribulation? Someone is undergoing the nascent soul lightning tribulation in the city? Is he crazy?" Although Qinchuan had never seen a nascent soul stage cultivator undergoing a heavenly tribulation, he knew very well that the destructive power of the nascent soul stage thunder tribulation was extremely terrifying. It was enough to turn the land within 1,000 miles into scorched earth. If this person was really undergoing the heavenly tribulation in the mountain amongst city, the city would suffer heavy losses. Countless people would die under this heavenly tribulation. This heavenly tribulation is indeed the nascent soul stage thunder tribulation, but it's a little strange. Lion Duke frowned. The pressure of this heavenly tribulation is too strong. Lion Duke had also undergone a heavenly tribulation when he became a demon king, so he was very sensitive to the aura of the heavenly tribulation. He could conclude that this heavenly tribulation must be the nascent soul stage thunder tribulation, but the power of this heavenly tribulation was unprecedentedly strong. It was definitely not something that an ordinary golden core stage cultivator could trigger. Suddenly, Lion Duke turned his head and saw Zhong Cheng's figure suddenly appear behind him. He anxiously said to Qin Chuan, "Come with me." Hearing Zhong Cheng's words, Lion Duke seemed to think of something. His face changed slightly and asked, "Is the person undergoing the heavenly tribulation that little girl?" "It's not just madam." Zhong Cheng had no time to explain. He grabbed Qin Chuan's arm and was about to leave. Hearing Zhong Cheng's words, Lion Duke was stunned for a moment, and then suddenly turned his head to look at the sky outside. No wonder he always felt that the pressure of the heavenly tribulation in front of him was a little too strong. It turned out that there was more than one golden core stage cultivator undergoing the heavenly tribulation. It's too much of a coincidence that the heavenly tribulation can happen at the same time. Muttering in a low voice, Lion Duke's figure flickered and disappeared. He had to go and see such a rare miracle. When he was caught by Zhong Cheng, Qin Chuan instinctively wanted to struggle, but he was no match for Zhong Cheng. In the blink of an eye, he was bound by Zhong Cheng and could not move. He didn't even have the chance to ask who Zhong Cheng was. Whoosh! Zhong Cheng took Qin Chuan back to Zhong Mansion. He pointed to Zhong Chuyu and Ningya, who were standing in the living room, and said, "Help them." When Qin Chuan saw Ningya and Zhong Chuyu standing together, he couldn't help but show a touch of shock on his face. It turned out that the person who was undergoing the heavenly tribulation was his teacher. However, he was just a foundation establishment cultivator. How could he help in this situation? When this thought appeared in Qin Chuan's mind, he also saw the consul's leg meat in Ningya and Zhong Chuyu's hands that were being crazily devoured. In an instant, he understood how to help them. Qin Chuan took out the remaining 7 portions of leg meat, then threw them all to Ningya, and said loudly, "Teacher, it's all here. Is it enough?" Ningya didn't respond to Qin Chuan. She just reached out and grabbed the leg meat thrown by Qin Chuan and shared it with Zhong Chuyu. Then they disappeared in a flash. Just when Ningya and Zhong Chuyu left, Lion Baron's figure also appeared in the living room in a flash. He looked at Zhong Cheng and said, "I just sensed it. I didn't expect it to be the two of them who were undergoing the heavenly tribulation." Lion Baron really didn't expect that the people who were undergoing the heavenly tribulation would be Ningya and Zhong Chuyu, because he had met Ningya before. Although Ningya was already in the peak gold core realm, there was still a certain distance between her and the heavenly tribulation. Her foundation was not enough. Who would have thought that Ningya and Zhong Chuyu would begin to undergo the heavenly tribulation in the blink of an eye? "I didn't expect it either." Zhong Cheng smiled bitterly. "It's a long story. Then take your time. The two of them should have gone out of the city. Let's follow them and protect them." Lion Baron laughed. 2 more nascent soul cultivators are about to be born in this world. This is not a trivial matter. While speaking, Lion Baron patted Qin Chuan on the shoulder and said to Qin Chuan, "Boy, from now on, you can walk sideways in this world. Now there are at least 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 nascent soul cultivators protecting you." 5 nascent soul cultivators. This force gathered together was definitely a powerful force that no one could ignore, and Qin Chuan was the center of this force. Chapter 541. Rumble. The aura of the lightning tribulation above the sky had become thicker and stronger. The residents of the city in the middle of the mountain had already fled due to the panic in their hearts. The cultivators, on the other hand, were discussing it animatedly. They were all extremely excited and curious. The Golden Core Lightning Tribulation was a common lightning tribulation in the cultivation world. Most of the cultivators had seen it before, so it could be said that they had a better understanding of it. The lightning tribulation in front of them whether it was the pressure or the area it covered, far exceeded that of the golden core lightning tribulation. Anyone with a normal brain would think that this must be a lightning tribulation of a higher level than the golden core lightning tribulation. Above the golden core lightning tribulation was the nascent soul lightning tribulation. This also meant that there would be one more nascent soul cultivator in the world mountain from now on. If these people knew that it was not one person who was preparing for the tribulation, but two people, they would be so shocked that their eyeballs would pop out. Just as everyone was discussing the sudden appearance of the lightning tribulation above the mountain city, Ningya and Zhongchuyu, as the parties involved, had already left the mountain city and were flying towards the wilderness in the distance. After they left, the lightning tribulation above the mountain city also moved slowly. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the huge and thick dark clouds, and the momentum was extremely vast. "No, I feel like I can't hold on anymore." Zhongchuyu's expression suddenly changed. She looked up at the thunderclouds above the sky and said to Ningya beside her, "The lightning tribulation is coming. I feel it too." Ningya looked at the sky with an extremely dignified expression. "I really don't know whether to thank you or blame you." According to Ningya's original plan, she wanted to try to pass the tribulation 3 years later. Trying to pass the tribulation now had both advantages and disadvantages. The advantage was that she could become a nascent soul cultivator in advance, but the disadvantage was that she was not prepared enough. The pressure of the lightning tribulation would be stronger and its power would definitely be greater. The difficulty of passing the tribulation would be greatly increased. Once she failed, what awaited her was death. "I should thank you." Zhongqiu looked at the leg meat in her hand and said to Ningya, "If you didn't give me these things, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to hold on now." "If you really want to say thank you, then say it to Qinchuan." Ningya glanced at the leg meat in her hand. "This is from Qinchuan." Hearing Ningya mention of Qinchuan, Zhongqiyu's face couldn't help showing a complicated expression. She didn't expect that she had already owed Qinchuan a huge favor before she had even helped Qinchuan. Boom, boom, boom. The thunder became louder and louder. Ningya and Zhongchuyu looked up at the thunderclouds in the sky at the same time, waiting for the first thunder tribulation to fall. Of lion's lion, to the lion's expression, of lion's lions, and lion. Lion shook his head. "This is the first time I've seen such a situation. I don't know anything about it. According to common sense, there are 9 nascent soul stage thunder tribulations. 3 is weak, 6 is strong, and 9 is rare. But looking at the size of the tribulation cloud, their thunder tribulations should be around 6. Will it be dangerous? Qinchuan was worried. He didn't know what to do in the face of such a thing. Everything depends on God's will, Lion comforted Qinchuan. With the treasure you gave them, they should be fine. Lion's voice had just fallen when a white-haired old woman suddenly appeared on their left. She looked at Lion with deep eyes and whispered, "Lion, you are still alive. I didn't expect you to still be alive." Lion looked at the old woman and laughed. "I haven't seen you for many years. You are getting uglier." "Humph." The old woman snorted, turned to look at Zhongqing, and asked, "Why are there 2 people under the tribulation cloud?" She recognized Zhongqiu, but she didn't recognize Ningya. "Because the 2 of them are going through the tribulation together." Zhongqing looked at the old woman. "You'd better not mess around. Our world mountain now has 2 more nascent soul stage cultivators. This is a happy thing. Why would I mess around?" The old woman smiled. "I just felt that this thunder tribulation was a bit unusual, so I ran out to see the situation. I didn't expect that there would be 2 little guys going through the tribulation together." Lion pointed at the old woman and said to Qinchuan, "Do you see that? This is the city lord of the mountain city. Her name is Yinshan." Hearing Lion's words, Qinchuan immediately said respectfully to the old woman, "Junior greets senior." Yinshan looked at Qinchuan for a while, then turned to Lion and asked, Who is this little guy? This is one of our juniors. Lion patted Qinchuan's shoulder and said to Yinshan with a smile, the two under the tribulation cloud are also his seniors. Yinshan heard this and looked at Qinchuan again, but this time, her eyes were filled with surprise. It was extremely rare for an ordinary person to have a nascent soul stage cultivator as their senior, and Qinchuan now had 2. Later, he might have 4. This kind of background would scare people to death. Gotcha! Suddenly, a power of thunder as thick as a bucket fell from the tribulation cloud, directly bombarding Ningye and Zhongchuyu. The two tried their best to resist with their spirit shields, so they were not injured. The thunder tribulation has begun. Zhongqing looked at Zhongchuyu and Ningye nervously. He was even more nervous than when he was going through the tribulation. The first 3 thunder tribulations are generally not very powerful. The power of their first thunder tribulation is comparable to the second thunder tribulation of an ordinary nascent soul stage cultivator. Lion let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, this power is not exaggerated. Big cousin, can you send me near the tribulation cloud? Qinchuan looked at the tribulation cloud in front of him with a strange expression, and an extremely bold idea jumped out in his heart. Lion looked at Qinchuan with a puzzled expression and asked, "Why are you going there? Can't you see clearly from here?" The eyesight of cultivators was far superior to that of ordinary people. With Qinchuan's eyesight, even if he couldn't see very clearly, he could see more or less. At that time, it was because they considered Qinchuan's eyesight that they stopped here. No. Qinchuan shook his head and then said seriously, "I want to try to absorb a trace of the power of the thunder tribulation." Hearing Qinchuan's words, Lion Ju couldn't help but be stunned. Zhongqing even reprimanded Qinchuan, "Nonsense! With your realm, you may not be able to withstand even a thunder tribulation as thick as a strand of hair." If this was the Golden Core stage thunder tribulation, Qinchuan wanted to make such an attempt, but this was the nascent soul stage thunder tribulation. Its power was far more than 100 times that of the Golden Core stage thunder tribulation. With Qinchuan's current realm, he would definitely be turned into ashes upon contact. Wanting to absorb the power of the thunder tribulation was completely wishful thinking. Chapter 542. Compared to Zhongqing, Lion Baron obviously knew Qinchuan better. Since Qinchuan made this request, he must have some confidence. He looked at Qinchuan seriously and asked, "Are you really sure? This is not a joke. Please believe me. I won't joke with my life. I'm sure." Qinchuan replied solemnly. When the thunder tribulation began, he felt his heartbeat accelerate. The thunder-devouring scripture even ran on its own, as if it was extremely eager to get close to the thunder tribulation in the distance. If not, Qinchuan would not have made such a request. "Lion Baron, are you going to mess around with him?" Zhongqing frowned and looked at Lion Baron. Qinchuan was young and had never seen the power of the nascent soul stage thunder tribulation. It was understandable that he would make such a brainless request. However, Lion Baron actually asked Qinchuan if he was sure. This was very abnormal. Lion Baron looked at Zhongqing and said, "Qinchuan's talent rune is thunder attribute, and the cultivation method he cultivates is also a top thunder cultivation method. Since he made this request, he must have felt it. If he misses this opportunity, it may be a great loss for him." "Yes." Qinchuan nodded and said to Zhongqing, "Senior, this matter is also an opportunity for me. If I miss it, I will definitely regret it for the rest of my life. Please rest assured, Senior. Since Junior has made a choice, I will naturally bear the consequences." Hearing Qinchuan's words, Zhongqing's face couldn't help but show a touch of embarrassment. He had promised Zhongchuyu that he would protect Qinchuan. Now that Qinchuan wanted to take the risk, if he didn't stop Qinchuan, how would he explain it to Zhongchuyu if something happened to Qinchuan? Seeing the embarrassment on Zhongcheng's face, Yinshan smiled and said, Zhongcheng, we might as well give him a chance. I also want to see what he plans to do. Alright, let's not talk about it anymore. It's settled. I'll bring him over. Lion Baron did not wait for Qinchuan's response. It pulled him towards the clouds. When they were about 100 meters away from the clouds, Qinchuan told Lion Baron to stop and land on the ground. After they landed, Qinchuan said to Lion Duke, Big cousin, stay away from me. If something happens, I don't want you to get involved. No need, I'm right beside you. Lion Duke shook his head. The thunder won't hurt me too much. If something happens to you, I'll be able to save you in time. But if you're far away, it's hard to say. Seeing Lion Duke's good intentions, Qinchuan no longer insisted. He felt that the thunder-devouring art was running faster and faster. He quickly sat cross-legged on the ground and took the initiative to run the art. Other than that, he did nothing else. Just as Qinchuan was circulating his cultivation, the second bolt of tribulation lightning had already descended, and it fiercely struck the spirit shield that Ningye and Zhongchuyu had jointly formed. A violent rumble resounded, and the spirit shield was covered in cracks. When the thunder collapsed, it turned into countless tiny thunder power. A strand of thunder power as thick as a strand of hair seemed to be attracted. It slowly drifted towards Qinchuan, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground. It went into Qinchuan's forehead. Buzz! When the strand of thunder power entered his body, Qinchuan's body trembled slightly. His face suddenly turned pale, and he looked like he was in extreme pain. Lion Duke couldn't help but be surprised when he saw this. Although he had expected this, he still found it unbelievable when he saw Qinchuan withstanding the thunder power with his own eyes. Although the thunder power was only the size of a strand of hair, it was still a nascent soul-stage thunder tribulation. In the distant sky, Zhongcheng and Yinshan, who had been paying attention to Qinchuan's movements, also noticed that Qinchuan had absorbed a strand of thunder power into his body. Their expressions became a little strange. This young man is not simple. Yinshan chuckled. It's no wonder that so many of you are giving him special treatment. Hearing Yinshan's words, Zhongcheng nodded gently and said, He is indeed a rare genius. If he doesn't die, he will definitely become a great person in the future. Although Qinchuan had already mentally prepared himself, when the thunder power entered his body, the intense pain almost caused him to faint. At this moment, Qinchuan's body was like a stone mill. The thunder-devouring art was madly circulating, pushing the stone mill in an attempt to crush and absorb that trace of tribulation lightning energy. However, even though there was only a small amount of tribulation lightning energy, it didn't move at all no matter how hard he tried to crush it. In fact, it even faintly showed signs of breaking the stone mill. Just as Qinchuan felt that he couldn't hold on any longer, a wisp of green smoke suddenly floated over, enveloping the power of tribulation lightning. A moment later, the power of tribulation lightning that was as solid as a boulder melted away like snow. This green smoke, is it the runic sword? Qinchuan was extremely shocked. He didn't expect the runic sword to help him again at this critical moment. In the face of Qinchuan's shock, the runic sword proudly spun a few rounds in Qinchuan's mind, as if telling Qinchuan, This is just a small matter, don't be shy. Just when Qinchuan was about to respond to the runic sword, another strand of thunder power entered his body. However, it was melted by the green smoke in a breath's time and turned into nutrients in Qinchuan's body. Rumble. When the fifth thunder tribulation fell, Ningye and Zhongchuyu were already covered in wounds and scorched black. The moment the power of the thunder tribulation poured into their bodies, they immediately swallowed the leg meat in their mouths into their stomachs and frantically absorbed the energy in the leg meat. While resisting the power of the thunder tribulation, they were also healing the wounds on their bodies. In just a short while, the two of them had already eaten all the leg meat they got from Qinchuan. They would have to rely on their own strength to resist the next thunder power. At this time, Zhongqing and Yinshan, who were far away, were completely unaware of their predicament. This was because all their attention was on Qinchuan. If I'm not wrong, this is already the 9th one. Yinshan looked at Qinchuan, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground with an indescribable shock in her eyes. Qinchuan was extremely lucky to be able to absorb 1 thunder power, but Qinchuan continuously absorbed 9. This wasn't just luck, it was terrifying. This kid is simply heaven-defying. Zhongqing could be considered to have seen a lot in his life, and had met many young and promising geniuses. However, this was the first time he had seen a monstrous genius like Qinchuan. That's right, in Zhongqing's eyes, Qinchuan was an out-and-out monster. If he wasn't a monster, how could Qinchuan continuously absorb 9 thunder power? Even a golden core cultivator might not dare to do such a thing. Chapter 543. When Qinchuan had refined the power of the 9th lightning tribulation, he finally stopped. It was not because he wanted to stop, but because the runic sword had taken back the wisp of green smoke. Without the help of the green smoke, it would be a joke if he wanted to continue refining the power of the lightning tribulation. Phew! Qinchuan let out a long sigh of relief. He turned to look at Lion Duke and said, "Thank you for protecting me, big cousin. My cultivation is over. If you didn't finish your cultivation, I would have been scared to death." Lion Duke looked at Qinchuan strangely. "How did you manage to absorb so much lightning tribulation?" If Qinchuan only absorbed a trace of lightning tribulation, Lion Duke could still accept it. But Qinchuan absorbed 9 lightning tribulations in a row. This made Lion Duke feel very incredulous. Facing Lion Duke's question, Qinchuan smiled and said, "This is just rumble." Just as Qinchuan was replying to Lion Duke, an extremely violent roar suddenly came from the sky. It was as if tens of thousands of tons had exploded at the same time in the blink of an eye. A gust of wind suddenly rose between heaven and earth, whistling wantonly. Lion Duke immediately reached out and grabbed Qinchuan. He then took Qinchuan and retreated far away. They retreated nearly 10,000 meters away from the center of the explosion. Qinchuan looked at the gloomy sky and asked Lion Duke, "What just happened?" Until now, Qinchuan's head was still buzzing. Lion Duke looked ahead with a solemn expression and said to Qinchuan, "This is their 6th lightning tribulation. The power of this tribulation is beyond my expectations." Lion Duke knew that Ningye and Zhongquyu's last lightning tribulation would be extremely powerful, but he didn't expect it to be so terrifying. It was enough to destroy the heavens and earth. Even he had to avoid it. Hearing Lion Duke's words, Qinchuan's face suddenly showed a touch of nervousness. He asked, "Then how are they now?" "I don't know." Lion Duke shook his head. "The aura of heaven and earth in front is completely chaotic. Before it returns to normal, I don't know the specific situation there. But the lightning tribulation has passed. If they are not dead, then they should welcome a new life later." Qinchuan heard this and wanted to continue to ask. At this moment, there was a burst of babies' laughter between heaven and earth. The gloomy sky also cleared up. Seeing this scene, Lion Duke smiled slightly and said to Qinchuan, "You can rest assured that the two are fine. They have formed their nascent souls." Amidst the clouds and divine light that filled the sky, Ningye and Zhongquyu sat cross-legged facing each other. Both of them had extremely gentle expressions on their faces. Above their heads, 2 chubby palm-sized babies were frolicking and playing, their laughter ceaseless. After playing around for a while, the babies seemed to be a little tired. They dizzily flew towards the figures under their feet, and with a whoosh they drilled into their heads and disappeared. At the same time, Ningye and Zhongquyu slowly opened their eyes and looked at each other. Their eyes were full of joy after surviving a disaster. Congratulations! Ningya smiled slightly and said to Zhongqiu, now you are a nascent soul cultivator. You can also be the ancestor of this world. Hearing Ningya's words, Zhongqiu chuckled and responded, in the future, you are no longer Teacher Ning, but Dean Ning. Speaking of which, it's time for you to take over your teacher's class. Just as the two were talking, Qin Chuan and the others also arrived. Feeling the aura of the nascent soul cultivators, Yin Shan smiled and said to Ningya and Zhongqiu, congratulations to Taoist Ning and Taoist Zhong for reaching the nascent soul stage. Congratulations! Lion Duke laughed and said, our nascent soul cultivator family has 2 new members. Zhongqing was also very excited and happy. He repeatedly said to the two, congratulations. As the only junior present, Qin Chuan's little mouth was as sweet as honey. He giggled and said, congratulations on reaching the nascent soul stage, teacher. Congratulations to this, senior. Let's celebrate together. Thank you, Taoist friends. Ningya smiled and said to everyone, when we return to the mountain city, Chuyu and I will definitely host a banquet to entertain everyone. Ningya originally planned to return to the Black Moon Combat Academy today, but because she had just reached the nascent soul stage, she had to stay in the mountain city to stabilize her realm. Just as Ningya was greeting everyone, Zhongquyu's gaze was fixed on Qin Chuan. The expression on her face was particularly subtle. Facing Zhongquyu's sparkling eyes, Qin Chuan felt a little pressured. Not to mention him, no matter who it was, being stared at by a nascent soul cultivator like this would make them feel uncomfortable. While everyone was talking and laughing, they also noticed the strange atmosphere between Qin Chuan and Zhongqiu. The scene suddenly became quiet. Under the subtle gazes of everyone, Zhongqiu sighed lightly and said to Qin Chuan, young friend, I feel a sense of familiarity with you, and it's as if we've known each other for a long time. I want to take you in as my godson. When Lion Duke and Yin Shan heard Zhongquyu's words, they felt particularly strange. Ningya and Zhongqing, who knew the reason, looked at Zhongqiu with extremely complicated gazes. As for Qin Chuan, he was a little confused. Why did someone want to be his godmother out of the blue? Although Qin Chuan didn't mind having a nascent soul stage backer, the feeling of being someone's godson was really too strange. Seeing that Qin Chuan didn't speak, Zhongqiu pursed her lips and asked, you don't want to? That's not it. Qin Chuan grinned. It's my honor that Senior, a nascent soul stage cultivator, is willing to accept me as your godson. It's just that I've only met Senior for the first time. Isn't it a little too hasty to do this? While speaking, Qin Chuan looked at Ningya for help. He knew that Ningya and Zhongqiu must know each other and wanted Ningya to help him. However, Ningya didn't seem to notice Qin Chuan's gaze and had no intention of helping Qin Chuan at all. Qin Chuan, accept it. Zhongqing sighed and said to Qin Chuan, this is a good thing for you. As for the reason, you will naturally know in the future. Lion Duke looked at Zhongqiu and Zhongqing with a playful gaze. Previously, he felt that the relationship between these two people from the Zhong family was somewhat inexplicable. Now, it seemed that their concern for Qin Chuan was more than inexplicable. It was simply insane. Once Qin Chuan acknowledged Zhongqiu as his godmother, it was equivalent to having 2 more nascent soul cultivators backing him up. He would definitely be able to do whatever he wanted in the World Mountain. Seeing that Qin Chuan was still unwilling to speak, Zhongqiu was a little disappointed. Then forget it, I agree. Qin Chuan coughed lightly and said a little bashfully, that is godmother good? Chapter 544. When she heard Qin Chuan call her godmother, Zhongqiu almost couldn't hold back her tears. Fortunately, she controlled her emotions in time and softly replied, I heard you. Seeing Zhongqiu on the verge of tears, Qin Chuan couldn't help but mutter in his heart. He really didn't understand why Zhong Chuyu was so emotional. However, he didn't notice that Zhong Qing and Ning Ya's eyes also turned red for Zhong Chu. It was said that cultivators wouldn't easily be moved and wouldn't shed tears. However, when it really touched the softest part of their hearts, what was the difference between a cultivator and an ordinary person? Under the gazes of the crowd from afar, Qinchuan's group of 6 instantly disappeared. The next moment, they reappeared in the city lord's mansion in the mountain city. Everyone, please give this old woman this opportunity to be the host. Yin Shan smiled at everyone. In the mountain city, there is absolutely no chef better than the city lord's mansion. Today's banquet will definitely satisfy everyone. As the city lord of the mountain city, Yin Shan invited everyone to the city lord's mansion as guests. Naturally, no one could refuse. Whether the food was delicious or not wasn't important. What was important was to make friends. As the only junior present, Qinchuan naturally didn't have the qualifications to speak. Under Yin Shan's lead, everyone walked into the city lord's mansion's living room. Compared to the technological feel of the other places, the city lord's mansion's living room was more simple. From the floor to the furniture, everything was carved from stone. Everyone took their seat. Qinchuan sensibly stood behind Ningya and didn't sit with the others. After all, everyone present was a nascent soul cultivator. It was necessary to show respect. Today is the day that fellow Ning and fellow Zhong advance to the nascent soul stage. It is this old woman's honor to be able to invite everyone to the city lord's mansion. Yin Shan smiled and turned her gaze to Ningya. This old woman is familiar with fellow Zhong, but this is the first time we've met fellow Ning. May I ask where fellow Ning is from? Ningya smiled and replied, I'm from the Star Dragon Federation's Black Moon Combat Academy. I'm Qinchuan's teacher and Chuyu's friend. Hearing Ningya's answer, a look of understanding appeared on Yin Shan's face. She smiled and said, So it's a friend from the Star Dragon Federation. Nice to meet you. While everyone was chatting in the living room, Qinchuan quietly turned on his optical computer and started replying to his emails. I'm at the city lord's mansion. I'm fine. Why did you go to the city lord's mansion? Someone was undergoing a tribulation just now. Do you know who it was? It's my teacher and my godmother. The two of them passed the nascent soul lightning tribulation together. Seeing the email sent by Qinchuan, Yaorao, who almost instantly replied to Qinchuan's message, was stunned. She knew who was Qinchuan's teacher, but where did this godmother of Qinchuan come from? When Yaorao sent another message to ask who was Qinchuan's godmother, she didn't receive any reply from Qinchuan. At this time, Qinchuan was pouring tea for his 4 elders. He simply didn't have time to look at his optical computer's mailbox. Yin Shan looked at Qinchuan, who was pouring tea. After pondering for a moment, she took out a brocade box from her storage ring and handed it to Qinchuan. After that, she said to Qinchuan, This is the first time we're meeting. As an elder, I should have carefully prepared a gift for you. However, today's meeting was somewhat rushed, so I only have this on me. Seeing this, Qinchuan immediately said to Yin Shan, Senior is too polite. As long as it's a gift from Senior, this junior will like it. A gift from a nascent soul realm cultivator was definitely not ordinary. Even if it was ordinary, Qinchuan absolutely wouldn't dislike it. He put down the teapot and took the gift from Yin Shan. He bowed and said, Many thanks for Senior's gift. Seeing Qinchuan accept the gift, Yin Shan smiled and said, Go back and open it. Maybe you'll like it. When Qinchuan left the city lord's mansion, he still felt that it was unreal. He always believed that one day, he would be able to sit on the same level as nascent soul realm cultivators and become one of them. However, he never thought that he would be able to sit and eat at the same table as 5 nascent soul realm cultivators. Nascent soul realm cultivators, Qinchuan muttered in a low voice. A look of yearning appeared on his face. He also yearned to have the status and strength of a nascent soul realm cultivator. That way, some things would be much simpler. Qin Chuan, come here. Just as Qin Chuan's mind was wandering, Zhong Chuyu called out to Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan heard her and walked over. Godmother, you're looking for me? Qin Chuan looked at Zhong Chuyu. If you have any instructions, just let me know. I don't have any instructions for you. I just want to give you a gift. Zhong Chuyu smiled slightly and took out a rectangular box and handed it to Qin Chuan. Open it and see if you like it. Qin Chuan took the box and opened it. Looking at the two long swords, one blue and one green, in the box, his eyes couldn't help but flash with a touch of surprise. This pair of swords is called Wind and Thunder Swords. It's a pair of best quality magic weapons. I think you should like it. Zhong Chuyu saw the surprise on Qin Chuan's face and was very happy in her heart. As for the wonderful use of this Wind and Thunder Swords, I have already written it in the manual in the box. Go back and have a good look. Qin Chuan nodded and said to Zhong Chuyu happily, Thank you for the gift, Godmother. I really like it. Ever since the bronze sword given to him by Lion Duke broke, he hadn't encountered a suitable weapon. This pair of Wind and Thunder Swords was exactly what he wanted. If he had a pair of swords like this in the 50 versus 50 arena, the battle would have been much easier. When Zhong Chuyu heard Qin Chuan say, I really like it, instead of, as long as it's a gift from senior, this junior will like it, she was satisfied. Qin Chuan, this old man also has a gift for you. Zhong Qing stepped forward and took out a crystal bottle and handed it to Qin Chuan. This old man doesn't have any valuable collection. Only this bottle of heavenly pure water can help you refine your body and help you go further in your future cultivation. Thank you, Senior. Qin Chuan knew the preciousness of the heavenly pure water and quickly accepted it. Kid, you've earned a lot today. Lion Duke laughed and said to Qin Chuan, not to mention that you have 2 more nascent soul stage elders, you also got such a precious gift. If others have half of your life, they will wake up laughing in their dreams. Ningya, who was standing on the side, smiled and didn't say anything. At first, she was worried that Zhong Chuyu would be too good to Qin Chuan and spoil Qin Chuan too much. Now it seemed that Zhong Chuyu still had some sense of propriety. Qin Chuan, during this time, I will stabilize my realm in your godmother's house. I will not leave the Jie Mountain for the time being. If you encounter anything in the demon realm, you can contact us. Ningya smiled slightly and said to Qin Chuan, I didn't dare to go too deep into the Jie Mountain before, but now there is nothing to be afraid of. With the 3 of us working together, even if the demon emperor wants to embarrass you, he will have to think twice. Chapter 545. On the endless prairie, Qin Chuan was sitting on the back of a big black bull, leisurely moving forward. His eyes were casually looking at the scenery all around, appearing very leisurely. Is this the demon realm? The scenery looks really good. In Star Dragon Federation, whether it was inside or outside the city, the aura of science and technology was extremely strong. Airships, shuttles, intercity tracks and so on could be seen everywhere. Everywhere, one could see the development of science and technology. Very few natural scenery could be seen. But the demon realm was not the same. Although the demon realm also had high technology, but the ecological environment was relatively maintained in its original state. There was no excessive development and destruction. Overall, the beauty of the scenery was better than Star Dragon Federation. The scenery of the demon realm is really good. On the back of the black bull beside Qin Chuan, Lion Baron was lazily lying on top of it with a grass in his mouth. In this half a year, I went to many places in Star Dragon Federation. No matter where I went, I always took a car or an airship. All the buildings I saw were very high-tech. The first time I saw them, it was somewhat novel, but after seeing more, it became boring. What you said is somewhat reasonable. In any case, I really don't feel anything when I see those tall buildings now. Qin Chuan chuckled. The natural scenery is more attractive. Qin Chuan, if you like the scenery of the demon realm, then you can live in the demon realm. I can take you to visit the demon realm and see every scenery of the demon realm. In front of Qin Chuan, Yarao was sitting on the back of the black bull. She was holding her chin with one hand and blinking her eyes while looking at Qin Chuan. Having heard what was said, Qin Chuan faintly smiled, then shook his head and said, "If you want to live in the demon realm, then forget it. Although the demon realm is good, but after all, it is not my home." Although Qin Chuan knew that there were also human race living in the demon realm, but those human race had been living in the demon realm for thousands of years, and not the human race who came to the demon realm later on. These two kinds of people were very different in nature. "If you don't want to, then forget it." Yarao curled her lips. "You speak as if I am very willing to be your tour guide." Ma Jiawen looked at the unhappy face of Yarao, then with a smile she changed the subject and said, "If we continue forward for another 1,000 miles, then we will reach the relay station of our Heavenly Horse tribe. At that time, we can directly ride Heavenly Horse tribe to go to Celestial Monster Plain." Hearing Ma Jiawen's words, Qin Chuan asked curiously, "Riding a Pegasus? Are you from the Heavenly Horse tribe?" "Of course not." Ma Jiawen chuckled and explained to Qin Chuan, "Just like the black bulls we are riding, they aren't from the barbarian bull tribe, they are just a means of transportation. Our Heavenly Horse division specially raises heavenly horses as mounts. These heavenly horses don't have high intelligence and are just ordinary creatures." Qin Chuan nodded in understanding. Then, he began to look forward to it. He had been on a flying shuttle and a flying ship since he was young, but he had never been on a Pegasus. Seeing Qin Chuan's looking forward to it expression, Yarao curled her lips and said, "Isn't it just Heavenly Horse? If you like it, then I will directly ask Jiawen to gift you one." Hearing Yarao, Ma Jiawen was somewhat helpless. Riding Heavenly Horse tribe was an extremely rare thing in their Heavenly Horse tribe. It was very rare in the outside world, but now Yarao wanted to gift one to Qin Chuan. If she didn't agree, then wouldn't she not give Yarao face? But fortunately, Qin Chuan saw Ma Jiawen's awkward expression, so he waved his hand and said with a smile, "Gift me one is fine, I just want to experience it. If we are talking about speed, then I think our Star Dragon Federation's flying shuttle is faster." The topic of gifting Heavenly Horse came to an end. Qin Chuan somewhat curiously asked, "If you demon race see me, a human, appear here, wouldn't you attack me? If you came here alone, then naturally it would be somewhat dangerous, but don't forget you are together with us." Yarao looked at Qin Chuan and said, "With this princess here, who dares to touch a single strand of your hair?" Qin Chuan felt that what Yarao said was reasonable, but he always felt something was wrong, and he always had a restless feeling in his heart. "Little girl, does your father know about the matter of you inviting Qin Chuan to Heavenly Monster Mountain as a guest?" Lion Duke looked at Yarao and said, "Don't let us get beaten up again when we arrive at the entrance. My father Emperor naturally knows." Yarao nodded her head and said, "After I returned from Unfettered Secret Realm, I told my father Emperor about this matter. My father Emperor agreed. He also wants to meet Qin Chuan, this handsome young man from human race." Hearing Yarao, Lion Duke laughed, then turned towards Qin Chuan and said, "You brat have to be careful, with my understanding of that Yao Feng, he will definitely set a trap for you." Seeing Lion Duke solemnly vowed, Qin Chuan couldn't help but somewhat curiously said, "With the honor of Demon Emperor, he shouldn't be scheming against me, this junior, right? Lion King, don't talk nonsense." Yarao glared at Lion Duke and said, "My father Emperor won't scheme against Qin Chuan. Haha, I have already said it here, when the time comes, Qin Chuan's situation will definitely not be too good." Lion Duke said with certainty, "Little girl, if you are not convinced, then how about I make a bet with you?" "Okay." Yaorao immediately agreed. You say, what are we betting? Let's bet whether your father emperor will make things difficult for Qinchuan or not. If I lose, I will accept your order and help you complete one thing. Lion Duke mischievously smiled. Then if you lose, what do you plan to do? Having heard Lion Duke, Yaorao thought for a moment and said, if I lose, I will also accept your order. What a joke, I am a dignified demon king, how can you compare with me? Lion Duke sneered. You think too highly of yourself. For others, Yaorao was the princess of demon race, and her status was noble, but for Lion Duke, Yaorao was nothing, at most she was just a junior with a little background and nothing more. Upon seeing this, Yaorao also knew that her condition was somewhat inappropriate, so she changed her words. If I lose, then I will give Qinchuan a drop of phoenix blood. Hearing Yaorao, Lion Duke's complexion suddenly became extremely splendid. He somewhat speechlessly said, you little girl really know how to calculate, knowing that you might lose, so you put the condition on Qinchuan. In any case, I won't get any benefit. Qinchuan also somewhat didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Originally he was just watching the fun, but the result was he was inexplicably dragged into this matter. Our bet is originally related to Qinchuan. If my father emperor really makes things difficult for Qinchuan, then I naturally should give some compensation to Qinchuan, and the condition of this bet will naturally be implemented on Qinchuan. Yaorao spoke with conviction. In any case, she was unwilling to give any benefit to Lion Duke. Fine, this old man will eat a loss. Lion Duke didn't dawdle. This time, little girl, you will lose. Your understanding of your father emperor is still too little. Ha! Chapter 546. Under the setting sun, Ma Jiawen pointed towards a huge castle in front of them and said to everyone, that is our Heavenly Horse Tribe's relay station. Looking at that tall castle, Qinchuan asked with shocked expression, this is the relay station you are talking about? This is clearly a castle. Hearing Qinchuan, Ma Jiawen chuckled and said, this was indeed a relay station originally, but because too many people were passing through here, it was simply expanded to its current appearance, but I still like to call this relay station. Yaorao continued from Ma Jiawen's words. Although this is called relay station, but inside it is fully equipped. Everything you can think of is here. Today we will rest here and experience the local conditions and customs of this place, then we will set out early tomorrow morning. Qinchuan naturally didn't have any objection regarding the proposal of Yaorao. This time he had come to Demon World with the intention of traveling all over the place, so he naturally didn't have any objection if he could experience the local conditions and customs of this place. Not waiting for everyone to approach the relay station, the guards of the relay station came to conduct routine inspection, but when they saw Yaorao and Ma Jiawen riding on the back of the ox, they immediately knelt down on one knee and respectfully shouted, Greetings, Your Highness Princess, Your Highness Saintess. You all get up, Yaorao said to the guards. Notify the relay station, arrange 4 rooms for us according to the standard of this empress. Yes. The guards stood up, then one of them went to notify the relay station, while the rest of the guards went to protect Yaorao and carefully guard against the surroundings. Seeing this scene, Qinchuan somewhat curiously asked Yaorao, how did they know your identity? If they only looked at your appearance, then wouldn't that be too careless? At that time when these guards had approached, almost at the first moment they had knelt down in front of Yaorao. Could it be that these people didn't need to distinguish the identity of Yaorao? Weren't they afraid if she was a fake? Hearing Qinchuan's question, Yaorao chuckled, then said to Qinchuan, a person's appearance may be similar, or even imitate, but aura won't, especially the aura of our imperial family. These guards didn't recognize who I am, rather recognized the aura of my body. After confirming the royal aura on my body, it won't be hard to confirm my identity. Upon hearing this, Qinchuan couldn't help but reveal a hint of sudden realization. It turned out that these guards didn't recognize Yaorao's identity, Rather, they recognized the imperial aura on Yaorao's body. In our Yao clan, we usually rely on aura to distinguish a person's identity. Just like the aura of our royal family, it's strong and domineering, but also tolerant and open-minded. It's the aura of a true emperor. Yaorao very proudly said to Qin Chuan, "After they sense my aura, they naturally want to worship me from the bottom of their heart." Qin Chuan was stunned when he heard this. Strong reporting and magnanimous? Why didn't he feel it at all? Seeing the questioning expression on Qin Chuan's face, Yaorao somewhat shyly said, "Do you think I am deceiving you? The reason you can't sense it is because you are a human. I am not questioning you, I just think it's a bit exaggerated." Qin Chuan grinned and said, "This is just like the perfume of our human clan. If a person frequently sprays a perfume and the surrounding people become familiar with it, then as long as they smell this perfume, they will naturally know who that person is." "I am talking about aura, not smell." Yaorao angrily said, "What are you thinking in your head? I am just making an analogy, that's all." Qin Chuan chuckled, "Don't be angry, of course I know there is a difference between aura and smell. I also didn't say you have any special smell. Bastard." When Qin Chuan and Yaorao were bickering, Ma Jiawen had helpless expression. She discovered that as long as Yaorao was together with Qin Chuan, her mood would never be normal. On one side, Lion Baron was happily looking at Qin Chuan and Yaorao bickering, and on the other side, he was sighing that being young was really good. When they arrived in front of the relay station, and after clearly seeing the scale of the relay station, Qin Chuan couldn't help but said to everyone, "If you didn't tell me this is a relay station, then I would have thought this is some aristocrat's castle." Having heard what was said, Ma Jiawen faintly smiled, then said to Qin Chuan, "Let's go, I will take you to see the inside environment of this castle-like relay station. You will definitely be surprised." Under the guidance of the guard, everyone smoothly entered through the gate of the relay station. After seeing the inside environment of the relay station, Qin Chuan was stunned. "This is small world fragment." Qin Chuan was dumbstruck. He had never thought that the inside of this relay station was unexpectedly built inside a small world fragment. Ma Jiawen nodded her head, then said to Qin Chuan, "You didn't see incorrectly, this is indeed a small world fragment, but correctly speaking, it should be a broken small world." Hearing Ma Jiawen, Qin Chuan sighed and said, "Awesome, truly a big deal ah." From the outside, the size of the relay station was roughly 10 square kilometer, not particularly big, but from the inside, one couldn't see the end of this relay station. There were high-rise buildings everywhere, and all kinds of birds and beasts were shuttling back and forth. Qin Chuan even felt as if he had arrived at a certain medium-sized city of Star Dragon Federation. From the beginning to the completion of the construction of this relay station, the total area is 8,000 square kilometer. It has everything. Ma Jiawen said to Qin Chuan with a smile, "Welcome to Pegasus Relay Station." Hearing Ma Jiawen, Qin Chuan grinned and said, "You call such a big place as Relay Station, it is very excessive. Your Highness the Princess." The Tauren guard slowly walked over, knelt down on one knee in front of Yaorao, and said respectfully, "Station Master has already prepared a place for you and your friends to rest, please follow me." "Let's go," Yaorao said to everyone. "Let's go to the place to rest first, then wait until the evening to stroll around here." Oh. A huge white bird descended from the sky, and landed in front of everyone. This bird's body was huge, and unexpectedly there was a villa on its back. Seeing this, Qin Chuan was dumbstruck. "This is our Pegasus Relay Station's characteristic flying home," Ma Jiawen introduced to Qin Chuan. "Don't think that this villa is on the bird's back, but it is quite stable. You absolutely won't feel any vibration or shaking inside. Simply awesome." Qin Chuan really didn't know how to describe his mood at this time. He felt as if he was a countryman entering a city for the first time. Everything he saw felt fresh. Qin Chuan followed everyone to the bird's back and entered the villa, then sat down on the sofa in the living room. Through the window of the living room, he could see that the ground was getting farther and farther away from them, but the living room was very stable, just like Ma Jiawen said. He couldn't feel any vibration or shaking. For a moment, Qin Chuan was full of expectations for his next trip to Demon Realm. Chapter 547. Who? The flying bird slowly landed on top of a building, then Qin Chuan followed everyone down from the back of the bird. Looking all around, he discovered that there were a lot of flying homes like the one they were riding. "Let's go, everyone follow me." As the host, Ma Jiawen walked in the front, leading everyone. As for the guards, they stayed in the same place and didn't follow everyone. "This building is round, the middle is empty, so we will go to our room from the middle. Now I will take you to see our special elevator." Hearing Ma Jiawen, Qin Chuan pointed towards that huge ancient tree in front of them and said to Ma Jiawen, "I noticed this big tree just a moment ago. This should be the special elevator you were talking about. You are very smart." Yao Rao chuckled, then said to Qin Chuan, "Do you see those long vines hanging down from that big tree? Elevator is your Star Dragon Federation's term. Here we call it tree ladder." While speaking, everyone had already arrived at the side of that big tree. Ma Jiawen grabbed a long vine, then said to Qin Chuan, "Grab the tree ladder. If you want to go to that floor, then when you arrive, gently pull the vine and you will be able to go." Seeing Ma Jiawen tied the long vine to her waist, Qin Chuan also grabbed a long vine and tied it to his waist. After everyone was tied, Ma Jiawen took the lead and jumped down. After Ma Jiawen jumped down, the weight of her body pulled the long vine to move downwards. Seeing this, everyone also followed and jumped down. Qin Chuan looked all around with extremely novel expression. This kind of feeling was really very wonderful, completely different from the feeling of riding the elevator. When they arrived at the 80th floor, Ma Jiawen lightly pulled the long vine, then the long vine stopped falling, then Ma Jiawen's body was put down from the platform in front of them. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan also learned to pull the long vine. That long vine tied to his waist produced a pushing force, sending him to the platform in front of them. After Qin Chuan landed on the platform, that long vine automatically untied and withdrew. The whole process was extremely natural. Qin Chuan looked at the long vine leaving, then said to everyone beside him, "Does this big tree have its own thoughts? It's really amazing. There are many of these trees in our demon realm. They are highly intelligent plants." Yao Rao said to Qin Chuan, "It can also be considered as working because its body is too big, the amount of energy it needs every day is too much, and relying on itself to absorb energy is simply not enough, so it must rely on external force to supplement, so it has become our demon world's tree ladder. It provides us with convenience, and we provide it with the energy it needs to survive." Hearing the explanation of Yao Rao, Qin Chuan's face couldn't help but reveal a hint of astonishment, as he had never thought that this was the origin of the tree ladder. This is the law of survival of nature. If you want to gain something, you must pay a price. Lion Duke chuckled. If this tree doesn't want to die, then it has to work to earn the energy it needs every day. If it doesn't want to work, I don't think anyone in the demon realm would be willing to raise it for nothing. When Qin Chuan heard this, he asked curiously, "Can the tree ladder transform into a human like you guys?" "It's very difficult." Lion Duke sighed and said, "There are countless demon race in demon world, and only demon race with high intelligence have the possibility to cultivate and have the opportunity to transform into a human form. Although tree ladder also has high intelligence, but the energy it needs to transform into a human form is too huge. Perhaps it might need to go through thousands of years of accumulation before it can succeed. So that's how it is." Qin Chuan glanced at that huge tree trunk and said with emotion, "The path of cultivation, no matter who it is for, it is an extremely difficult matter. You don't need to feel pity for Tree Ladder. Ma Jiawen said to Qinchuan. Once Tree Ladder cultivates into a human form, it will become Demon King, and will immediately surpass all living beings, so harsh conditions is a normal matter. Qinchuan looked at Ma Jiawen with extreme surprise, then again looked at Tree Ladder. No wonder this fellow's cultivation was so difficult. As it turned out, it was actually a step to heaven. While everyone was talking, they had already entered the room prepared for them by the relay station. The room was very big, and the decoration and furnishings were also extremely luxurious. The materials used were also extremely exquisite. It had the simple atmosphere of demon race, and also the exquisite elegance of human race. When this place was built, many things of human race were referenced, so you should feel very familiar with it. Yarao walked to the sofa and sat down, then said to Qinchuan, This place is the closest place to Jia Mountain, and also the place where the aura of human race is the densest in the entire demon world. Wait until you go deep into demon world, then you won't be able to see this kind of place. Qinchuan curiously looked all around, then asked Yarao, Are there any human race in this place? There are, but not many. Yarao replied, Majority of the human race here are from Jia Mountain, only a small part of them are local human race. Regarding these human race, our demon race's attitude is still relatively mild. Jia Mountain as the place where demon race and human race coexist, the relationship between human and demon race was relatively harmonious, unlike Star Dragon Federation's human race and Demon World's demon race. Merely, what made Qinchuan more curious was how to distinguish where the other came from. With regards to Qinchuan's question, Yarao also didn't know how to answer. After thinking for a little bit, she replied, Actually, this can also be considered relatively simple. From the expression and some body language, it can be seen. Just like the human race of Jia Mountain, when they see demon race, their behavior is very normal, but when the human race of Star Dragon Federation see demon race, they will generally unconsciously reveal hatred and killing intent, which can be very clearly felt. Hearing Yarao's explanation, Qinchuan nodded his head in understanding. He felt that what Yarao said was somewhat reasonable. After all, it was impossible for normal human race of Star Dragon Federation to come to Demon World. If they really came, then they would certainly be very careful, and when they encounter demon race, they would certainly be very vigilant, and would very easily reveal their identity. Originally I was worried about your performance, but it seems you are not worried about your identity being known by others. Looking at Qinchuan, Yarao curiously asked, Aren't you afraid of being attacked by the demon race here? Having heard what was said, Qinchuan chuckled. It's not that I'm not afraid, rather I don't think there is any need to be afraid. After all, my big cousin is here, he will certainly protect me. Right, big cousin? Lion Duke, who was sitting at the side, snorted upon hearing Qinchuan's words, which could be considered as a response. Well, let's end the chat here, everyone take a good rest, and wait until the evening when we go out for a stroll. Yarao stood up and said to Qinchuan, Tonight there will be a bonfire party, the scene will be particularly lively, we must not miss it. Chapter 548. After Yarao and Ma Jiawen left, Lion Duke chuckled and asked Qinchuan, How was it? How do you feel? Qinchuan seriously pondered for a bit, then replied, I feel very special, overall it makes me feel comfortable. Now you feel comfortable, but later you may not feel comfortable. Lion Duke said to Qinchuan, The attitude of Demon Clan of this heavenly horse station towards human race can be considered friendly, but in Demon World, especially in Heavenly Demon Plane, it is not like this, so you better be mentally prepared, understand? Before I made a bet with Yarao on the road that they will make things difficult for you, it was not a joke. Having heard what was said, Qinchuan solemnly nodded his head and said, I will be careful, thank you big cousin for your reminder. I am going back to my room to rest, you youngsters don't need to inform me when you go out to play in the evening. Lion Duke yawned. I am old, so I don't want to get involved in the matters of you youngsters. Before 6 o'clock in the evening, Qin Chuan was pulled away from the room by Yaorao and Ma Jiawen, who were in an excited state. Walking on the way to the bonfire party, Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he said to Yaorao, "Pay attention to your image, this dignified princess is pulling a grown man on the road. What kind of scandal is that? Idiot, can't you see the thing on my face?" Yaorao pointed at the veil on her face and said to Qin Chuan, "This veil has the ability to obscure my appearance and cover my aura, so no one will recognize who I am." Qin Chuan was somewhat speechless. "No one knows who you are, so you can act recklessly? Don't talk nonsense." Yaorao rolled her eyes at Qin Chuan. "Hurry up and go, otherwise there won't be any good seats." Qin Chuan doubtfully raised his head and looked at the artificial small sun in the sky, then said to Yaorao, "It is barely 6 o'clock and there won't be any seats? Aya, why are you talking so much nonsense?" Yaorao somewhat disdainfully looked at Qin Chuan. "If you continue to be long-winded, then there really won't be any seat left." Ma Jiawen looked at Qin Chuan and Yaorao, who were quarreling all the way, and somewhat helplessly shook her head. Now she felt that the top of her head was particularly bright, just like a light bulb. If she had known earlier that this would happen, then she wouldn't have followed Yaorao and Qin Chuan. When they arrived at the bonfire party, Qin Chuan looked at the dense crowd in front of him and couldn't help but be stunned. He exclaimed, "Why are there so many people?" In a huge open space, countless people were sitting together. Half were men and half were women. A rough count showed that there were at least 10,000 people. "I told you there will be a lot of people." Yaorao looked at the front, then said to Qin Chuan, "There is still a seat over there, let's quickly go." Under the lead of Yaorao, Qin Chuan and Ma Jiawen squeezed into the crowd, and with great difficulty found an empty seat and sat down. But the clamorous voices all around seemed to want to drown them. It was a mess. "Why are there so many people?" Qin Chuan looked at the crowd all around, then said to Yaorao through sound transmission, "Are you sure this is a party? Not a job fair? Even if it was a job fair, there wouldn't be so many people." Yaorao didn't explain to Qin Chuan, but Ma Jiawen, who was sitting at the side, said to Qin Chuan, "Not only the people of Pegasus Station will come here to participate in this bonfire party, people from many places within the radius of 10,000 li will also come here to participate. So many people are very normal." Having heard this, Qin Chuan was somewhat puzzled and asked, "Why is that?" "Because this bonfire party is a super large-scale blind date party," Ma Jiawen said to Qin Chuan with a smile. "Basically all the young men and women within the radius of 10,000 li will come here to look for their other halves through this bonfire party. If they miss this time, then they will have to wait for next year, so everyone is very active, no one wants to be single all the time." Hearing Ma Jiawen's explanation, Qin Chuan couldn't help but was dumbstruck. He subconsciously stood up and looked all around. With the number of people on the scene, wouldn't there be more than 10,000 people tonight? As if she had seen through Qin Chuan's thoughts, Ma Jiawen said with a smile, "Actually, it is not as exaggerated as you think. Majority of people are here to watch the fun, for example us. Others are here for blind date. What fun is there for us to watch?" Qin Chuan was puzzled. "Don't tell me we can't watch other people whispering sweet nothings to each other on the spot? Your thoughts are too dirty." Yaorao looked at Qin Chuan with a contemptuous gaze. "Later everyone will confess to their favorite girl. If the girl is willing, then they can hold hands successfully. If the girl is not willing, then they will fail. In addition, there will be another situation, that is, 2 boys or 2 girls will compete for the same object. In this case, if the defendant doesn't clearly express his love for one of them, then there will be a situation of competition on the same stage. It may be a duel, or it may also be a display of talent. In any case it will be very lively, not as dirty as you think." Hearing Yaorao, Qin Chuan's face couldn't help but suddenly saw the light. As it turned out, they wanted to watch this fun. Like this, his interest was also piqued. Qin Chuan, you better protect Princess. Ma Jiawen said to Qin Chuan with a smile. Wait, if someone confesses to Princess, then you have to step forward bravely. Having heard what was said, Qin Chuan grinned and said, How about directly making her refuse? The opportunity to refuse is limited. Ma Jiawen explained to Qin Chuan. If you continuously refuse the confession of 10 people and still don't find the object of your heart, then you only have 2 choices. Either you immediately leave the scene or accept the confession of the 11th person. There is no other way. Having heard what was said, Qin Chuan was somewhat startled. There is actually this kind of rule? Ma Jiawen nodded her head. After all, the purpose of holding this bonfire party is for blind date, not for people to watch the fun. This can also be regarded as a kind of means to clean up the people who are watching the fun. After all the people who are watching the fun leave, the remaining people can choose their object of interest. Yarao looked at Qin Chuan, then asked to Qin Chuan, If someone confesses to me, what are you going to do? Qin Chuan pretended to ponder, and didn't open his mouth for a long time. Seeing Yarao was about to go berserk, he hastily said, Of course I will step forward bravely and block those people. Consider yourself tactful. Yarao snorted, expressing satisfaction with Qin Chuan's answer. Qin Chuan smiled, then sizing up Yarao, he said, But looking at your image, I don't think there will be anyone who will confess to you. I see that there are girls who are more beautiful than you, hiss. Before Qin Chuan could finish his words, Yarao had already ruthlessly pinched his waist. His blood-curdling scream was drowned in the clamor of the surroundings, and didn't splash any waves. And at the same time, that huge wooden pagoda in the center of the scene had already been ignited, indicating that bonfire party was about to begin. Chapter 549. After the bonfire was ignited, the noise of the scene immediately became a lot smaller, and everyone coincidentally began to sing the ballad. Their singing gradually linked together and resounded through every corner of Pegasus Station. This is a ballad symbolizing beautiful love. Every time before the bonfire party officially starts, we will sing it. Yarao looked at Qin Chuan with sparkling eyes and asked, Do you want to learn? I will teach you. Facing Yarao's beautiful starry eyes, Qin Chuan found it very difficult to say a word of no, so he nodded his head with a smile and said, Okay, you teach me. Seeing Qin Chuan agreed, Yarao lightly opened her vermilion lips and softly sang, We are at the lakeside of the prairie, waiting for the bird to fly back. After Yarao finished singing, Qin Chuan also sang, We are at the lakeside of the prairie, waiting for the bird to fly back. When we grow up, we will have a baby. When we grow up, we will have a baby. Ma Jiawen, who was sitting at the side, looking at Yarao and Qin Chuan one after another singing, her face couldn't help but reveal a trace of longing. She also hoped that one day she could find a youngster she admired, and then they could sit together and sing, just like in the ballad, living in a place with beautiful scenery, and then together giving birth to a cute little life. When the ballad came to an end, the scene of the bonfire party gradually quieted down. After the scene was completely quiet, the confession began. Brave youngsters and young girls stood up, summoned up their courage, and walked towards the object of their admiration. Some people were happy, and naturally some people were sad. But just at the beginning, there were already people who successfully held hands and happily hugged each other. Seeing this scene, a burst of warm applause and cheers suddenly resounded, giving the most sincere blessings to this pair of lovers. And on the other side, 2 youngsters simultaneously fell in love with a young girl. The young girl who was chosen was from Spirit Deer tribe. She was a very lovable and very sweet-looking young girl. This kind of young girl was very easy to arouse the desire to protect in the heart of youngsters, and was also one of the best girlfriend image in the eyes of many youngsters. And at the same time, the 2 youngsters who confessed to this young girl of Spirit Deer tribe were respectively from Heavenly Horse tribe and Golden Leopard tribe. These two tribes were extremely famous tribes in the demon world. Both of them were relatively handsome and masculine, so the young girl of Spirit Deer tribe was at a loss for a moment, not knowing whose confession she should accept was a normal matter. Obviously, the two young men were prepared for this situation. The young man from the Pegasus tribe raised his head and let out a long howl. His body transformed into a pure white Pegasus. He whinnied and showed off his beautiful body to the girls of the Spirit Deer tribe, which attracted a lot of cheers. On the other side, the young man of the Golden Leopard tribe didn't want to be outdone either. His body transformed into a golden leopard, and he showed off his vigorous body and keen skills to the young girl of the Spirit Deer tribe. He also won the applause of the entire audience. The young girl of Spirit Deer tribe couldn't help but blush in the face of the youngsters of Heavenly Horse tribe and Golden Leopard tribe. She liked the white and delicate skin of Heavenly Horse tribe, but she also liked the bravery and vigor of Golden Leopard tribe. Seeing that the young girl of Spirit Deer tribe still hadn't made a choice, the youngster of Heavenly Horse tribe opened his mouth and spat out a ball of blazing blue flame. In the middle of the flame, a white Dan was constantly jumping. That was the demon Dan of Heavenly Horse tribe, showing that he was a top-level demon general. Seeing the youngster of Heavenly Horse tribe, the young girl of Spirit Deer tribe was overjoyed. She then looked at the youngster of Golden Leopard tribe, but found that the latter's face was gloomy. Obviously, his level was lower than the youngster of Heavenly Horse tribe, so it was inconvenient for him to show off. As expected, the girl from the Spirit Deer tribe chose the young man from the Golden Leopard tribe. When the two of them hugged each other and received the blessings of the crowd, the young man from the Golden Leopard tribe retreated in dejection. Qin looked at the departing figure of the youngster of Golden Leopard tribe, sighed and said, "This world not only looks, but also looks at the level of talent. If you don't have a certain level of talent, then it is really too difficult to find a girlfriend." Hearing Qin sigh, Yao Rao looked at him with a strange expression and said, "Isn't this a very normal thing? If you were not a genius youngster, but just an ordinary person, then do you think the two of us would have the opportunity to know each other, and would even sit together?" Qin smiled wryly and said, "What you said is very reasonable, but my idea is somewhat strange. But that youngster of Golden Leopard tribe is really a pity. He is younger than the youngster of Heavenly Horse tribe, so it is normal for his level to be lower than the youngster of Heavenly Horse tribe." Ma Jiawen said with some regret, "But I believe that by tomorrow, he will definitely be able to find someone he likes." Hearing Ma Jiawen's words, Qin was about to say something, but at that moment, a tall and mighty figure suddenly appeared in front of them. "Beautiful girl, please accept my most sincere love for you." The tall and handsome-looking youngster knelt down on one knee in front of Yao Rao, then presented a bouquet of roses symbolizing beautiful love to Yao Rao. Looking at Yao Rao, his gaze was incomparably passionate. Lang Xing was very sure that the girl before his eyes was his future wife. He had never been so serious like now, and no one could stop him. "Who are you?" Yao Rao frowned and looked at Lang Xing, who was kneeling in front of her. She was somewhat unhappy because this person was blocking her line of sight. "My name is Lang Xing, I come from the Great Battle Wolf tribe. I am one of the strongest and most outstanding warriors of Battle Wolf tribe." Lang Xing loudly said to Yao Rao, "Beautiful girl, please accept my confession to you." Hearing Lang Xing's words, Yao Rao couldn't help but gawked for a moment. At this time, she reacted, as it turned out she was being confessed to. Subconsciously, Yao Rao turned her gaze towards Qin, who was sitting beside her, and said to Qin, "It's time for you to perform." Qin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You still have the right to refuse." "But I don't want to use it." Yao Rao raised her eyebrows. "I want you to stand up." Facing the request of Yao Rao, it was very difficult for Qin to say a word of no. Just when Qin was preparing to stand up, Lang Xing, however, suddenly stood up and walked in front of him. Lang Xing's face was close to Yao Rao's, and using his pair of extremely aggressive eyes to look at Yao Rao, he loudly said, "Give up, you are not my opponent." Lang Xing was confident that he could defeat any opponent who dared to provoke him. "Whether I am your opponent or not, we have to fight to know." Qin Chuan lightly shrugged his shoulder. "I don't mind to teach you how to respect others on behalf of your parents. To be honest, although you sprayed a lot of perfume on your body, but it still can't cover up your body's unpleasant smell." "Oh." Lang Xing was furious. "I want to fight with you, the loser will leave here forever." Qin Chuan grinned. "As you wish." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.